Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. It's not a post-game show anymore. This is just going to be a live stream show as we go through this off season. And I figured, well, it's been about a week. I'd like to try to do these once a week if I can. I know it's going to be a little bit of an odd as far as the schedule goes, but I've got some thoughts tonight. So I wanted to talk it through a little bit with you guys, specifically regarding some of the continuing search for our offensive coordinator, since Schottenheimer has been mutually parted with, decided to be fired. Who knows what exactly happened on that situation. But specifically, we're going to have to talk a little bit, I think, about the growing disconnect that I think we're starting to see a little bit as it's playing out very publicly here between Coach Carroll and Russell Wilson. Specifically, I think as it concerns his offensive coordinator job. Well, one thing does actually lead into and bend into the other. And what we're seeing with this, and what's up, Levi, Decaf, how you doing? Derek, what's up, Azos? What you're seeing with this is Coach Carroll comes out at the start of the search when Schottenheimer is gone, and he says, well, you know what we're going to need to do here? We're going to need to get back to the run-first approach. Double back down on that old school way that brought us about the most success. We got to be more efficient, effective, explosive. He used every superfluous word that he could to describe what he wanted to do with the running game, basically. And that was all well and fine. Of course, many of us out here would rather see Russell have an offensive mastermind brought aboard, bristled a little bit at it. But we went, okay, I guess that's what they're going to do. But then it was very interesting where almost on the flip side of that, almost within, I think, a day or two later, Russell Wilson then has himself a Zoom press conference where he says, you know, I think we got to be more explosive again. I think I want to try to score 24 points before half. I want to run more of that up-tempo stuff. Still want to throw a bunch. And so you've got both of these two guys basically saying two different things. And there's going to be a lot of people saying, well, it's just Russell talking, or it's just Russell just... The folks that have been for a long period of time here holding up on the side of saying, everything's fine, everything's great, everything's good, it's perfectly fine, it's perfectly good. It's not. These are the type of indicators that you see this. This is the indicator that you get also in addition to this when you get the Brandon Marshall take first thing on the morning there that they had, and where he's talking about Russell Wilson growing dissatisfied and this being the story that no one's talking about. Everyone's instantly going to, again, these same naysayers to there being some trouble here, there's a bridge over troubled waters here, is that they'll say there's nothing wrong with Russ, everything's fine. Brandon Marshall played in Seattle in his final year. He was here with Russ. There is some relationship established there. And they were very upfront. The Nick Wright guy, as Marshall's giving you these tidbits of the Russell Wilson situation, you can hear Wright. I'd ask you all to go watch that video. You're hearing Wright go, we could be running with a lot of stories today. We could be running with a lot of other stories which should be taking the headline on this, which should be leading us through the way that I actually wanted to run through. But because of Brandon Marshall and his knowledge of this situation and his link with the situation and saying this is a story, they were all but telling you, look, we've gotten from the sources within Russell Wilson's camp that this is where he's feeling and this is what's going on. It's worrisome. It doesn't mean that Russell's on his way out of town here. This thing can be okay, maybe, but there's going to be a lot we can read into from this hiring of this particular offensive coordinator. If Russell just goes for the safe guy, who's the run-first guy, who we probably are pretty sure that Russell Wilson did not sign off for, probably not going to make Russell Wilson very happy, probably going to lead down the road to eventually his departure. Gets more of a guy who potentially Russell likes or is in favor of, well, then that's a sign that the organization's doubling back down on Russell and that they're going to link themselves to Russell going forward. A lot can be read into this offensive coordinator job, more so than you ever probably could normally read into an offensive coordinator hiring. Let's get on in there to the chat a little bit more. I just want to get some of those initial thoughts out. Arizo says, it's been a while. My first question is, do you think we are re-signing Ryan Neal? Because he was a solid backup for Jamal. All is going to depend on that, Azos, with the team looking at Ryan Neal and thinking that he could be a starting strong safety in this league. I think it's a lot less likely to happen this offseason, as we've heard now reports that certainly the salary cap is going to be lowered. $180 million is the amount that they're sort of circling around at this point. That would indicate at that point to me that there's a better likelihood of Neal coming back with the salary cap's depression, less teams able to spend the big bucks, don't want to take as much a risk on a guy who's just done a little bit of a flyer for a couple games. I would think that they would try to bring him back, and he probably will be back, and all things being equal. VG Mark, how you doing? Gina Bra. Guys, I don't see us winning a Super Bowl anytime soon if they're paying Russ $35 million to manage the game. He either takes a pay cut or Pete needs to go and let the offense run through our quarterback. Well, I think by the one thing you can take from some of these comments by Russ, by him having this press conference, and remember, this isn't just this one moment of him saying this in the second. He said at the start of the season there was supposedly an ultimatum made to the front office saying, if you don't let me cook, you don't let me open this offense out, you will eventually see me walk out the door. You know, there are these rumblings that have existed in the backs, and if they're going to hire on the run-first guy that's not going to let Russell cook, I don't think it's going to be a matter of us needing to then go trade him. I think he's going to want to not be here at that point. Why should he, especially with his comments of, you know, no MVP votes, and, man, it'd sure be nice to have a Patrick Mahomes-type offense. You know, where do you think all these comments are leading to if Coach Carroll's just going to hire on the run-first guy who's going to be very boring in his approach offensively? Cameron, how you doing, Cameron? What's up? Dustin, so happy we extended the most successful head coach in the NFC this past decade. Pete Carroll, so lucky he's our coach. I'm glad you like that he's our coach, man. Jarls, how you doing? Pete needs to adapt or retire, plain and simple. I've thought a lot about this situation, Jarl, and it really does come back again and again in my mind to the ego and the hubris, to the, you know, I am the best, you know, God's gift to coaching. And rather than thinking of it from a little bit more of a thoughtful approach and coming off your high horse maybe a little bit to understand, you know, what's at play here. But I don't think that he's in that mindset, and not a lot of the moves that he's made have been along that mindset. Seemingly right now, the front runner we have for the offensive coordinator role is Dave Canales, I think the quarterback coach for Russell Wilson. And again, it just shows back into that, what I call the hire of nepotism, where you're just going back by what you know, by maybe not the most qualified candidate, but the candidate you just kind of most are familiar with. It's not the best way to hire people, in my opinion, especially in the NFL where there's a lot of dynamic minds out there. You want to widen out that butterfly net, capture as many as you potentially could capture, and Seattle doesn't seem to necessarily be doing that. We'll still see how the hiring goes. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going this direction. This is just where the indicators are at. Dominic, how you doing? Dominic, what is up, my man? Fiji Mark, the rumors about Gase are the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So many players have had a bad relationship with him, like Adams. None of the names really coming out made a lot of sense to me or really have brought much excitement from me as far as, wow, that's a dynamic hire. Wow, that's thinking outside the box. Wow, you guys are on it right now. I've yet to hear any name floated out there that isn't something that's just like, you know, normal, boring, just, you know, well, how about this guy? Well, that's a guy. How about him? How about, think with a purpose and a strategy on who you're going to bring in. But there's also been people out there, I think, in the Seahawks land, as far as other analysts who pointed to, and I think rightfully so, is this the most attractive job right now for the best of the best offensive coordinators out there? We all think it is. We all just think, oh, who wouldn't want to come to this kind of team, this kind of environment, this atmosphere, Russell Wilson in his prime, let him go. But maybe we need to establish the fact a little bit of that they don't have necessarily the prime candidates at hand, because it is taking a little bit of time to bring in this offensive coordinator. And Adam Gase doesn't do anything for me either. He doesn't need to be here. It made no sense to me, as well, as most of what his success was built on was when he was really with Peyton Manning and that short passing game. He's not going to be as adept at attacking deep down the field. He's not as committed to running the football. These are things that Coach Carroll is going to want. So I don't understand that one. That's almost a kicking the tires or making it seem like they're doing an exhaustive search when in actuality this thing might be actually narrowed down to a precious few guys. Cameron Hughes says 2000 Raiders D or the Seahawks 2013 D. I take the 2013 D, Cameron. You know, the Ravens didn't have to play when they went into that Super Bowl to play the team opposite them in New York Giants. They weren't playing the same kind of they weren't saying the same kind of offense Seattle had to play at Denver. That's the thing that's the cherry on the top for me on it, Cameron, is that defense not only had that run of years that they had as the top DVOA defense, historically great defense for multiple years running, but the cherry on top is you get to the Super Bowl and you play an offense that had the most explosive offensive season in NFL history, and you squash them. You turn them into like a little bug under your foot. That, to me, separates them. Competition matters, man. Decaf, yeah, we won't get Gase, I guarantee it. Yeah, Gase is not coming here. You guys don't worry about that one. He ain't here. He's not coming here. Bird of Prey says, fire Pete Carroll. Hashtag fire Pete Carroll. I know where you're coming from, Bird, and there's many Seahawks fans in the ranks right now who feel the same kind of way. Robert Jimenez says, greetings from Seattle. Thank you for the live stream tonight. Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you to everyone out there for joining me here on a nice little Thursday night. I know it's getting a little late for you guys over there on the mainland, but I appreciate you, Robert. Thank you. Henry Soto, what's up, Henry? How you doing, man? Cameron, I renamed my YouTube channel and gained 200 subs in a day. Can get this account modded on your channel? Of course you can, Cameron. Of Of course you can. Just go. All right, so Cameron, here's the move to do, of course. Just sign into that account and then just put it in the comment section so I can see it in the comment section because, stuff gets caught lost in the live stream. Be Uncharted, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, don't know if you follow CFBs. What's your thoughts on the debacle going on at the University of Tennessee? I wish Pep Hamilton would get the nod. I wish Pep Hamilton will get the nod. Sorry, trying to speak right. I'm not sure on the thoughts on the college football stuff. I've been a little bit out of it with some of the, is it going to go, is it not going to go, through all that preseason stuff kind of wore me out with them. And with half the conferences going, half the conferences not, I just was like, look, I'll watch all the college film after it's all done and in the books and everything else. I think there's something to do with who they're going to bring in the coach behind Phil Fulmer, right? Be Uncharted. And so Pep would have been the best, but it's like they're hiring something else. You give me a little bit more on it because I read a little bit about it the other day, but it's slipping my mind just a little bit at the moment. Let me see here. But congrats, Cameron, on getting those subs, bud. Keep up the good work. Jarl, regardless of all the winning seasons Pete has brought this franchise, there's a reason NFL contracts are all about what are you going to do for me, not what have you done for me in the past. Absolutely. When you sign a contract in the NFL, you're paying for future performance, not past performance. That's the nature of the contracts in themselves. And, when it does come to Russ and paying him, I think some of this that's happening right now, and the reason you're seeing this publicly play out a little bit between these two forces is because I've long maintained that I think the front office and Coach Carroll, I don't know which one of them believes this or thinks this, but I think one of the two of them, if not both of them, think in the back of their mind, we could probably build up another super strong team if we had a good chunk of that $35 million that we got to allot to our starting quarterback. We could do a lot of damage with that amount of money. I really do think that somebody upstairs there thinks that. And then you can understand where they could. It's a lot of money to be paying. I've maintained before, you're paying the quarterback $35 million, and you got a guy like Bobby Wagner making top money at middle linebacker position, $18 million a year, and Russ is making double of that. That's a gross inequity, and it's very hard to build a team that way. B. Russ says, Pete is trying to piss Russ off, so he requests a trade. It's pretty clear based on the coordinators they're talking to, in my opinion. I think there's a solid argument to be made in that respect, B. Russ. I do. I think Pete knew he knew what I'm sure he was going to get his reaction when he went public with that. And I think a lot of this has played publicly out a little bit. It hasn't played like a forest fire that's out of control and these guys are just at each other's throat. It's like this disconnect towards a marriage breakup where there's not the yelling and screaming that's going on. It's just the couple stops talking and it's icy stares and it's cold shoulders. And it feels a little bit like that. And I don't know if that's what he's doing necessarily, but you certainly, your head had to turn a little bit into wondering when Pete did that as a press conference, how do you expect Russell to swallow that down? What do you think you're going to sit Russ down, right before the season and go, okay, look, you're pissed off. Okay, I get it. Okay? But I'm positive. This environment's amazing. We're going to win. Don't you like winning, Russ? You don't care about throwing. You just want to win. Does he think he's going to, at 70 years old, Russell now 10 years into this league, going to sell him on the thought process of not being the front runner on this offense, of not being the point man? That would be silly to me, but I think this is where I come back into Coach Carroll's ego and his hubris and believing, yeah, I can potentially do that. Or as you said, B. Russ, he's just thinking, I want to kind of push this guy to the point where he waives his no-trade clause and wants out of town. Could be that as well. August Schrappen, what's up, August? How you doing? Henry Soto, when do you think we can be a contender again? I think you can be a contender through this offseason, Henry. You've got a ton of talent on this football team. You do. It's a matter of just making the right moves in the offseason. What we saw last offseason is you had $50 million in cap space. You had obvious things that you needed to address. You didn't really address them fully. You went bargain basement shopping in free agency. You traded valuable picks in the second round, third round to get a guy in Darrell Taylor who wasn't going to play, which was a problem with your medical staff saying that he was going to be able to get back on the field. So you just got to kill it in the offseason. Killing it in an offseason, you can turn it around. That's the beauty of the NFL. That's the beauty of the parity of the sport. There is no sunken down, you're lost in the other side, and you got to just kind of pull one boot at a time out of the mud to eventually get yourself back up the hill. You can get right back up there. The San Francisco 49ers were division worst, right? I think one of the worst teams in the league 2 years ago. They get Bosa, suddenly they're in the Super Bowl. So things can change in a heartbeat in this sport, but it relies upon the teams making smart, moves, having a clear purpose for where they're going. What is our strategy here? What is what we're trying to do? Not our quarterback really wants to throw, but our coach just wants to run and play defense. But then our general manager doesn't know what to do because he kind of answers to the coach, and he's trying to probably placate a little bit to both sides. It gets a little bit messy with that, I think, just a bit. We'll never go back to the Super Bowl with Pete Carroll at the helm. Hard to see right now, Bird of Prey. Hard to see right now with the way things have gone. There certainly is not an upward trajectory right now where we're at. We're flatlined, plateaued. August to Shrapnel. We just need a good offensive lineman and a good quarterback. Then we might win some games. I would love to see them attack the offensive line. August, I'm going to do a Madden video for you guys where I do my own off season of how I would do it. And in the way I'm going to build this up is I'm going to build through the offensive line. I'm going to seek out veterans that I can trade for that will be upgrades at positions potentially like center, left guard. And if Dwayne Brown retires, go sign a left tackle as well. Seattle could go very far no matter what they do with the quarterback position or any other positions on the football field, just really laser focusing in on that offensive line this offseason and trying to build that up into actually a strength. I would never be against that. B. Russ, I was looking at our schedule next year. That thing is going to be rough as hell. Could be. It could be B. Russ. There's always a little bit of change year to year on stuff that happens, and it looks a little bit daunting right now. That is for sure. But, like take the Saints, for instance. The Saints look like a tough game based on this year and recent years of how tough they played. Saints are something like $95 million over the salary cap right now. The Saints are going to completely gut their team to get themselves under the cap. So they may not be this same strong dog that they were before. We might have a little bit of a puppy on our hands. And when you see a little bit more of that, I think, in certain games play out too. What are the Colts? I think Colts are on our schedule. What are they going to do at the quarterback position? Great defense, but if we're playing against a lesser quarterback at that point, or rookie quarterback, makes the game a little bit easier. So is daunting, but not horrible. Random McDaniel coming in with a solid $10 dono. Thank you, Randall. I appreciate you, my brother. And I salute you. Thank you, Randall. I like a lot. Decav, Metcalf's burner. If we get an explosive offensive coordinator like Russ wants, and we want, do you think we should all be excited about our offense next season? Yeah, you should. You should, because there is a certain argument to be made within all of this mess to say, as I pointed out in my last video, of Schottenheimer having to own some of this in the basicness of his offense, the predictability of his offense, the lack of wrinkles, the lack of pre-snap motion, the lack of disguising things pre-snap, everything being so obvious and repeating over and over out of certain formations. That stuff kind of gets to go out the window with the new coordinator. It all goes fresh now. And if you get a dynamic mind that understands how to utilize those things rather than making them a detriment to your team, then I would expect a turnaround at that point. And I think I was listening recently, I think it was to Chris Sims, who I think does have a lot of really, I know he's a little bit of a, some people hate him, not Chris Sims, Chris Sims. Some of you guys out there don't like him, some of you do, but man, I think he's really on with some of his thoughts with what you could do with Russell Wilson. And if you give him offensive coordinator, it's like you're going to bring him a guy that he doesn't even know what he doesn't know. He doesn't even know that I can run a play this way. That's how you guys run this. You have all these little wrinkles for that and this, and then you do that. It's taking it to that masterclass zone that I don't think Coach Bevel's a masterclass offensive coordinator. I don't think Schottenheimer's a masterclass offensive coordinator. But bringing in a guy like that with Russ and allowing him to develop, I don't know that Russ would take to it and it would make Russ into this super player. I'd love to see it though. I'd love to see it tried. Because Schottenheimer was boring. Schottenheimer was not that guy. And so, yeah, I do think he would be much improved by it. And I can't understate this enough. The simplicity of our offense, how easy it is for teams to prepare against it, really makes our offense have to slightly always go uphill at a little bit of an incline. And you can remove that stuff. I mean, the Niners are the masters of it because the Niners do the opposite with their pre-snap motion and all that stuff where they do a little bit of a decline. They get moving. They get their team offensively moving a little bit down the hill through that stuff. The Seahawks have got to start to embrace that with the guy they bring in. Doesn't matter whether he's a boring choice or a mastermind. B Uncharted says, at this point, I'm a Hawks fan. I became a Hawks fan in 2008 after the Packers moved on from number 4, and Pete signed on since I'm a USC fan. I love Russ, but the team doesn't need him to win a title. I agree that at the end of the day, I love Russell Wilson. He's my favorite Seahawks quarterback of all time, probably my favorite quarterback of all time, just for what he is and the uniqueness of how he did it and has been so good for so long. At the end of the day, there is an argument to be made that you can build this team up with a rookie quarterback, super talented. These rookie quarterbacks are coming into this league now, and they're showing out very early on. Get him on the rookie contract, save all that money on the side. It's okay to love Russ. Russ is still a fantastic player. I don't think the back end of the 8 games is who he is now as a player. But with that said, when you're playing, this is the thing I've harped on time and time again. You're going to ask to be paid top in the sport. You got to perform like it. You can't crap the bed for 8 games through the back half of his schedule. That doesn't work. It doesn't. That will sink a team's hopes and chances. Randall McDaniel says, "Who's your top choice to be an OC of the names being thrown around?" I would go to Anthony Lynn probably, because now we can take Peterson's going to sit for a year. Hamilton doesn't do anything for me. Shekel from the Chargers, who's the offensive coordinator, I just as soon as go to Anthony Lynn over the top of him. Still doesn't get me super excited at all. Hamilton, in reading up on Pep, there's some good, some bad with him that you read. It's a plus and minus thing. You got the Raiders, I think, not offensive coordinator, maybe quarterbacks coach, well-respected guy. It gets hard when we start looking at guys like, well, he's a quarterbacks coach for this. He's not even ever been an offensive coordinator. What? So Anthony Lynn gets it, Randall, but he sort of just gets it by default, because the guys that are there, I don't like. Adam Gase? Ugh. Adam Gase? I mean, no. The googly eyes alone would drive me crazy at press conferences, you know? Russ is really coming along. You know, right now we just think he's just got to develop some of his pre-snap game a little bit better. Stop looking at my eyes. Don't you look at my eyes. Joe Fan, stop looking at my eyes. As I see something like that. God, I don't not. Please not. Please no Gase. Please God, no Gase. But Randall, I don't know. I'm just not happy with this thing. I'd love it if they got the Campbell guy from Iowa. He would be just a dream guy. You bring him in, you go, hey, look, we got a chart here for you. Eventually come in offensive coordinator, maybe even be a head coach. There's not a lot of, the one thing I will say, Randall, there's not a lot of dynamic offensive minds out there just sitting on the open market a little bit. You know, there isn't. It's kind of everybody's got a job that's worth anything, and the guys that are kind of secondary guys have their jobs on the college level. You have to. I don't know who you bring in. You know. Like Dirk Cutter. I was thinking of him the other day, but I was like, I don't know. The best season on Jameis Winston, good offensive coordinator. He kind of intrigues me a little bit. Not a lot there. Henry Soto, DK's impatient miss made us give up that pick 6, right? No. The pick 6 is a nuanced problem, Henry, where there's a lot of blame to go out on that. I was saying this in the episode, I'm repeating myself a little bit on this, but first off, the problem, Russ has got to recognize a little bit the pre-snap and not letting the defender, the cornerback, get a rolling start into getting in to break up the bubble screen. Then you've got Brett Swain, who doesn't lay a very solid block at all on the play. If Brett Swain actually puts his shoulder into it and actually just tries to block the guy, with the guy already moving as fast as he is, you would be able to push him out of the way. But because he went weak with it, he went limp-wristed with it, he didn't get anything on it. Then you've got DK Metcalf sharing the blame on that moment in the respect of he's got to come back to the quarterback at that point. As the ball's thrown, he's got to start to move back to him and then make his way upfield, as opposed to waiting for the ball to get there to him. But at the real bottom line of it, Henry, the real bottom line of who's the problem on that play is Brian Schottenheimer. If you're going to run that trip set like that and then run a bubble screen out of it, you're not really ever going to run that to the short end of the field. And if you do run it to the short end of the field, meaning you're on the hash marks that's closest to the sideline, if you're going to run that, then it better be completely disguised and it better befuddle the defense completely. You know, DK Metcalf had games this year that he would go where Russell wasn't even targeting him. And it wasn't even giving him a chance at times. And that built up into the last part of that game in the season where he wants to help the team, but he can't because Russell's literally not getting him the ball. It was inexplicable sometimes with Russell just kind of ignoring him at moments. So, and I think he was getting doubled up a little bit more, and it's getting frustrated. And he's a young kid. I mean, we've got to remember he came in this league at 21 years old. This is not a 27, 28-year-old guy in the middle of his prime. He's coming along, and he will continue to come along. I don't think DK Metcalf, though, Henry, is the problem on this team right now. Jordan Williams, we need Russ to take a pay cut and need to release some players to get an offensive lineman and a third string third-string receiver. Jordan, I agree. I agree. I've long been advocating for Russell Wilson to embrace the model of taking a pay cut. I would go, if I was him, back to Carroll and say, look, you bring in a young dynamic mind. I'll give you about $10 million back of my salary. Bring me offensive coordinator I want. A little bit of a compromise, a little bit of a negotiation, right? I would love to see it. And you see the benefits of that instantly, Jordan, because you saw with Patrick Mahomes last year. Signs the 10-year deal, and then what do we see right after? They're able to hold on to Sammy Watkins. They get Travis Kelce signed to a contract extension. They get Chris Jones, who they had on a franchise tag, and it seemed like they were not going to get those negotiations done. Suddenly now they can get them done. This is on top of already having signed Frank Clark. This is having already signed Tyrann Mathieu. I can't say his name, by the way. I always call him Walter Matthau, but I can't say it. I always call him a honey badger. But that's what that allows you to do when he takes that pay cut. And Russell, at no point in time in the 2 contracts he signed off of his rookie deal, has ever taken a pay cut. He's asked to be paid at the top of the market every time, and he wants to be re-upped on the most minimum basis, which is every 4 years. That's tough, especially when last time negotiations got really heated to the point that Russell was asking for 20% of the cap on a sliding scale, to the point that the Seattle floated a trade to the Cleveland Browns for the first number 1 overall pick to move the negotiations along, and negotiations went right up to the last second at the start of the season. So you got to consider all that stuff in all this. And I'm definitely getting behind the chat. Gina Bruh, what players do you expect Seattle to sign, let go? I would expect Seattle to let go Shaquille Griffin, Chris Carson are going to be out. Greg Olsen obviously is going to retire. Who else would be gone at this point? I do still think that there's a chance they could look at taking a trade of Tyler Lockett to free up some extra cash. I think Bruce Irvin has a chance to come back. I think Benson Mayowa has a chance to come back in because those guys will take low-end contracts to come out. I think KJ Wright's going to go out the door based on his comments of wanting to get paid like a top-end linebacker. You don't have the money to spend like that. I mean, you give him another $7 million and you're paying, now you're into the second year of Bobby's deal, you're 25, you got a rookie contract, a first-round rookie contract, and Jordan Brooks on top of that. I mean, $30 million to a linebacking core is just a little bit too much. So those would be the guys that I would expect to probably move on and stay. No, and, we don't have a lot of free agents outside of that. Puna Ford, I think, will stay. I think he's going to be a guy probably in line to get a contract extension, actually. So those would be the guys off the top of my head. Bird of Prey, it doesn't matter who's going to be the next offensive coordinator. Pete runs the show and controls the offensive scheme anyway. Might as well hire Ronald McDonald for that position. Solid comment, Bird of Prey. And you're right, Pete Carroll, I've said, he's got to get his finger out of that pie. He's not an offensive guy. He's a defensive guy. He was a defensive back going into college. Under Bud Gradden, he was a defensive backs coach, defensive coordinator. I don't know why he's got it in his head that he somehow has some advanced understanding of the offensive side of the ball, that he gets to have some say on that and say stuff. Just stay out of it. Let the offensive coordinator do his thing. Like I was saying before, he's like a conductor of a symphony. Let him conduct. 80-37, Seattle stagnation, shaking my head. How long do you think Pete will stay? Any chance he retires soon, even with the extension? The Gase rumor is the final straw for me. The Gase is hitting you guys a little soft. I get it, man. The Gase thing should be. What in God's name has this guy done? He's the guy that created the comment that Peyton Manning made a lot of guys rich. And he's the guy people are specifically talking about with that comment. I don't think Pete goes the full 5 years, 80-37. There's few coaches in this league that get to 75 years old and they're still head coaching in this league. And when you got 100 years of an NFL league and we haven't seen that really much prior, I wouldn't expect to see it. I do think he wants to do a couple more years. It's telling that it's not a 3 or 4 year extension, but a 5 year extension, which would indicate to me probably at least 3 more years we're looking at of Coach Carroll. And unfortunately, it's going to have to be that he retires AD because he's not going to get fired. That hope and that wish amongst the fan base, and God, I get it. I do get it. It's not that I don't understand where you guys are coming from, but everything for me is just a logical kind of experiment that you play out. Given 5 year extension midseason, takes the team to 12-4, wins the division title, has an owner that's not got the same hands-on approach that Paul Allen does, maybe even be looking to sell the team potentially, / just let the guys run it who Paul Allen had hired to run it. So he's not going anywhere. We're just going to have to sit on it a little bit. It stinks to a degree, I think, though. It does. Random McDaniel, they're taking a bit longer this time. Shoddy got hired in 5. Yeah, they are taking a little bit longer. It's an interesting thing, too, Randall. Why is it taking longer? Are they being exhaustive? Does nobody want the job? Are they just trying to look like they're doing it exhaustive? Team 12s, I really hope we draft Javonte Williams, running back Tutu Atwell, and Israel Mukamua. Well, I watched one of those guys based off actually Randall McDaniel put me on to Javonte Williams, of course, in North Carolina. Really fantastic running back. Absolutely he is the Marshawn Lynch of this draft. I was watching the top 5 back. No, he's not actually. The guy from Alabama is the Marshawn Lynch of this draft, but he's very much similar in that mold. So there's 2 Marshawn Lynches in this draft, kind of. The kid whose name's escaping me right now out of Alabama, who I just love, my favorite running back in the draft. And this kid who's probably right behind him is my number 2. I know a lot of people like Travis Etienne, and I was trying to watch film on him the other night and see what it is that people like. Some people, make the Alvin Kamara comparison. To me, he looks a little bit more like a Clinton Portis, minus the long distance speed that Portis had that allowed him to bust off the 60, 70 yarders. I think that they got very similar kind of movement to him. He'll probably be a solid back, but I'll look at those other guys, Team 12s, but I'm on board with you with Williams. And I think with Williams, where the running back class will drop, he very well could fall into that middle round, range of things. I'm going to expect him to probably run like a 4.55 or something at the combine, which will probably allow him to drop down just a little bit. But he's a Seahawk runner to his core. He's in that Marshawn mold, exact. Dustin, imagine wanting to fire the most successful head coach in the NFC this past decade. Laughing my ass off, overprivileged Seahawks fans. We ain't going to win it all or make deep runs every season. Well, we haven't made a deep run in a long time, Dustin. I think right now we're 5 years. I think the Jaguars in the last 5 years have more playoff wins than we do. I think the Browns in the last 5 years have more playoff wins than we do. So you can point to a decade, you can point to 20 years, you can point to 30 years, you can point to a given time. But I think at this point in time, my opinion, it's we've been pretty stagnation is, I think, the good word. Cameron Hughes, I can't believe that Eric Bieniemy hasn't gotten a head coaching job. We should promise Bieniemy the head coaching job after Pete retires to get him to come be our OC. I love it, Cameron. Very interesting to see that. It is. You would think that Eric would get it, especially as much as Andy Reid is, just going to bat for him, trying to get somebody to consider it. I don't know why. The only thing I can think of is that maybe around the league, they really feel like it's Andy Reid who's the reason for that offensive success. It's his brain that's making that thing run. It's not Bieniemy, despite what Reid might be saying. And it is odd that he hasn't gotten it. Maybe it though is too that Bieniemy's in a position that's a little bit where he gets a little bit of a say, a little bit of a pick. You got head coaches that just are desperate. Whatever head coaching job comes available that could want them, they'll jump on it. Maybe he's a particular kind of cat who wants to go to the right situation. Doesn't want to go to Detroit. Doesn't want to go to a lesser franchise that hasn't been there for years. Could be that too. Randall McDaniel, would hiring Adam Gase be a bigger head scratcher than signing Blair Walsh? No. Yes, it would. Because at least with Blair Walsh, Randall, this was a little bit of like what we saw with Jason Myers. Go back last year to Jason Myers in his season he had, Randall, and the fan base wanted to put him up and put him on a stake and set him aflame. They said, a 4-year deal to this guy. What are we doing? A horrible kicker. He's no better than Walsh. And then he has a Pro Bowl year this year. Kickers have the up and down years. Even the good ones will have the up and down years, or they'll go through some yips for a couple of seasons. It was easier to maybe predict and hope that the guy could get through his yips. Whereas Adam Gase, as I was speaking about, there's just not a lot there with him showing that he's really going to maximize talent and get the most out of guys and be this, again, the mastermind type that we're kind of talking about here. Dark RH, how you doing, Dark RH? Good to see you in. When did you start streaming? What's up? We've been on for about an hour, maybe at the most. Just kind of thought off the cuff. It's been a bit. Need to get on here and talk with you guys. Dustin, do you see the difference? Then it's clear lack of basic football. Team 12s, if you don't see the difference, then it's a lack of. Yeah, Dustin, this comes back to, again, I would caution, Dustin, it's a matter of, it's two different ways people look at this. As Team 12 said, would you rather go 0-16 and you didn't get the Lombardi 12-4, losing the last 5 years? It's nice to be a consistent winner, but what is it really worth at the end of the day if you're not pushing for Super Bowls? If it's obvious you have a top end, Dustin, and that's the thing I think you're kind of being a little bit, evasive on here a little bit, in that there's been, like we said, stagnation, 5 years, same spots you've been staying. You can go point to a Super Bowl in 2013, but we're going to be getting into a decade past that point here soon. This isn't just a what have you done for me lately last year. This is 5 years now of staying, of topping out at the same point. And there's fans that are happy with that. There's fans that isn't. I think it's okay to be on either end of it. I don't besmirch the fan that is happy just being a consistent winner. And if we don't get to another Super Bowl, they shrug and they go, that's fine. I'm not going to hate on you for that. Enjoy your fandom in the way that you enjoy it. But the verse side of this is that don't tell another person, another fan, how they have to enjoy it. And if they're not happy not winning the Lombardi, which is the whole point of the effing sport, then it's a little ridiculous to knock them for that and seeking it out. It doesn't matter how hard it is to win, my opinion. Darker H, I think Russ was burnt out in the second half of the season from carrying the Seahawks so hard in the first 5 to 6 games. I mean, maybe. How does that show off, though, Darker H? What, he's just mentally exhausted from it? I don't know. It's a kind of a vagary there as far as how does that show up? He's just week 7. He's just like, I'm exhausted. I've been throwing so much, my arm's tired. I don't know if I buy into that as much. Be Uncharted. The Tennessee players were allegedly getting cash in McDonald's bags. The university fired Pruitt, the head coach, and now their top 10 class is getting poached. Tennessee might be facing huge sanctions. Yeah, they'll swat them for it. You know, they'll swat them for it. Well, I think Tennessee got caught. I don't think they're the only ones doing it. I think it's pretty proliferated still in college football right now. The players are getting cash. I do. And if it's happening in Tennessee, which isn't even one of the big dogs, right? You know it's happening in other places too. Let's get Daryl Taylor on the line. Let's ask him some questions, though. Daryl, how's your McDonald's money? Cameron Hughes, the Seahawks the past 5 to 6 years feel like a Pac-12 team. They dominate their easy schedule, then meet the good teams in the playoffs and get bounced. Yeah, it's the truly competing for a Super Bowl being we're going to compete to get to the playoffs. And one of those years in the last 5 years, we haven't gotten to playoffs at 9-7. So that has been where they've been on this. None of these seasons that we've had over the last 5 years that we've had, has there been any point, any real unbiased fan as we're watching this team and trying to assess what they are, said, oh, this is a Super Bowl contending team right here. Nobody really could have ever said that. You couldn't have said it last year with the injury situation by the time we got the Packers. Nobody felt with any sort of huge amount of confidence going into this playoffs. I thought they could beat the Rams, but I didn't know if they could get much done past that. And it's felt that way. The general feeling of that has been that way every single year here over the last 5 years. It's continued to play out like this. I got a donation. Barry Sotoro coming in with the $20 donation, the big fatty $20 dono. Barry, I salute you, my guy. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. You always come in hot with that. $20 dono. Thank you, man. He says, sure wish I got your channel's notification when you went live. Thanks for doing what you're doing. Oh, man, I appreciate you. I'm going to try to get my schedule posted up onto my page, and I'll do a little message posting with it so you guys have more of a schedule. I'm going to lock it in. I've just been with my work schedule, not as certain with things, but it's all coming into place now, so we'll have something to you shortly. The Slot Freaks with a $10 donation. Thank you, Slot Freaks, for the $10 dono. I appreciate you. He says, shout out to our Hawks Nest host. Great job, bro, from Jay and Drew over here on the mainland in Seattle. Hope you're well. I am doing very well, Drew, and Drew and Jay. Thank you so much for the donos, my guys. I appreciate you, and thanks for watching too. I know you said you guys checked me out a bunch. I appreciate you on that. Alrighty. Dark RH, Rams, 49ers, Seahawks all have some variation of QB coaching problems. I don't know if it's that though, Dark RH. I mean, I don't know if it's that. And, I think you probably can attest to the fact that Sean McVay right now is playing with the notion of having another quarterback in there and that he feels like maybe his offense isn't being run right, Dark RH? And he inherited that quarterback. He didn't sign off on that quarterback. That came with the price of admission that had already been drafted the year before for him. So there's a strong point to be made that's really the quarterback problem, not necessarily the coaching problem, I think, with the Rams. And McVay might just be right when it comes to Goff in that respect. I don't know what the problem would be with the 49ers coaching outside of just their coaches are getting poached. Saleh goes to the Jets and they lost their I think run game coordinator. But I think both of those two coaching staffs, the Rams and the 49ers, I think your coaching staffs end to end are one of the strengths of those organizations. Jose Rodriguez, how you doing, Jose? Good to see you, my man. Rodney, press show. You have to remember when the Hawks won the Super Bowl, they were running the ball a lot. I do, Rodney, and I think that there's a certain bit of intrigue to be had into thinking about the thought process of going back to running the ball, as boring as some of that would be for some of us. but then reinvesting those resources back into the defense. This year you had $80 million going to the offense, $50 million going to the defense. Maybe you start to flip that back around. You bring in a young, talented quarterback on a cheap contract. There's a part of me that wants to see if that formula could play back out to true as it played back out to true once. I don't think that they're going to knock drafts out of the park like they did in 12 and 13, but nonetheless, or 11 and 12. But man, I can see and understand why there's somebody maybe in the front office or maybe Carroll is thinking this might be the better way for us to go. This might be the smarter approach. We're banging our head against the wall. We're doing something that's not ever going to give way and give us that inch that we're looking for, that extra edge. Rodney says we just got to stop getting our offensive line from the Pete Carroll thrift store. Yeah, that's right, Rodney. No more dollar store deals on offensive linemen. No more 2-for-1. Get one left guard and run right tackle package together. No more of that. It's quick coupon clipping when it comes to the offensive line. Let's go get some talent and let's pay for it. They've short-sold it for so long. How long have we bottom-end our offensive line? And I know that they're paying Dwayne Brown, but he's the only guy they're paying. And really at any one time, they only seem to be paying one guy if. I know that's where they're trying to save money, but man, there's other positions on this football team that I think you can save money at and then invest in a crucial part of your team, especially if you want to run the ball on anybody. How do you expect to run on anybody if you can't put your will on anybody? If there's certain teams, well, if we run up against a talented front four, we're just going to be running into a wall. And we saw a little bit of that this year. I think we will continue to unless they really do invest in that line, which is I'm saying I'd like them to see them laser focus on that this particular offseason, specifically left tackle, specific left guard. Even if Dwayne Brown comes back, I'm going to anticipate his injury situation is going to prop back up next year, as old as he's been and as extensive an injury history as he's had. Randall says, if we trade Russ, it'd have to be with the Jets. I think with our number one gone next 2 years, it's less likely they trade him. The chance that being a top 10, top 5 is legitimate with the new quarterback. Yeah, I think that there's not a high likelihood this season, offseason, Russell Wilson gets traded. There's a potential chance, but it's not a high likelihood. And I think you're right. It's got to be a big market team, Randall. Jets could make some sense. I think that the thing that throws it off, Randall, is the Robert Saleh hire. Wilson's going to want to go to an offensive-minded approach team. He's going to want to go to a team that's going to be willing to open it up. Is Saleh, who just came from the 49ers, who's run heavy and has his Seahawks roots with Coach Carroll going back in the day, is he really going to want to open it up like that, Randall? And it would be a brilliant move by Saleh to bring in an offensive guy like that that's just completely just wild and he'll take the roof off their offense and let Russ cook. But does Saleh have the stones to do something like that? I'm not so sure he would. I would think he would go with more of your almost like Schottenheimer would be like one of his candidates he would look at. Dark RH says DK Metcalf is going to win Offensive Player of the Year next season. I love it. I love it, Dark RH. I hope so, man. I could see it. Cameron Hughes says our last 3 playoff wins: 11-5 Vikes in 2015, 9-7 Lions in 2016, 9-7 Eagles. Then we get dominated by good teams, and let's be honest, we shouldn't have beat the Vikes in 15. Solid point. All solid points, Cameron. I can't contend with any of it, and it's a little bit of what I'm talking about. And then it's just, what is the identity of the team the last 5 years? Is there identity? I mean, does somebody actually stand there and go, well, they've been Super Bowl contending teams the last 5 years. They just haven't quite gotten far along the thing. No, I think we all go, they're a good team. They're a good team. That's fine. But then the conversation bears out to what value is that in being a good team? And that's your top end. You're thoroughly locked into that good team area of things. What is that really worth, tangibly speaking, in a league where it's about going for a Lombardi? It's about being that last team on the mountaintop. It's an interesting discussion. It is. It's an interesting debate. Invis Potion. What is happening between Russ and Pete? I haven't been up to date with the Hawks news lately. Invis Potion, I gave a little bit of the breakdown at the start of this, but I'll just do the consolidated version here for you. You've got Coach Carroll coming out after he fired Schottenheimer, which did seem to surprise Russell Wilson a little bit, frankly. And Coach Carroll comes out and he says, we're going to go back to running the football. I feel like we need to just get back into running. We need to be more explosive with it. We need to dive into that. Okay. Russell Wilson has a Zoom call a couple days later where he comes out and he says, we got to open this back up. I want to score 24 points and a half, man. I want to blow the doors off teams. I want to start throwing. I want to run up tempo. So you've got two different things going on, two different people saying two different things here. And the one key point on it I would offer to everybody who is still a dismayer of saying, oh, there's no big deal in any of that. If Russell felt the way he did, that he wanted to have a say in the offensive coordinator role, if that's how he felt, and that he's like, I've earned the right now to say to Pete, you need to bring me in on this. You need to consult with me on this. Okay, fine. Why do you have to go public with that? Why do you have to say that publicly? Why do you have to do a press conference? Why don't you pick up your cell phone and call Coach Carroll and say, I want to have a say on this offensive coordinator? Why is it being played out publicly? Ask yourselves that. Because he's trying to control the public relations machine that both the Seahawks front office and Russell Wilson play their games in. And they're both playing that game right now. That's why he did that press conference. And it does speak to and show there's a little bit of a disconnect here between them. Not a differences thing. Not there's going to be an absolute divorce, but we do have a little bit of a rift here, I think. And I don't think it's out of line to say. Law Rep 2, no question. Just wish we could have Deshaun Watson on this team. Yeah, you know, the one key thing with Deshaun that I saw as a stat that popped up to him that jumped out to me, Russell Wilson this last season was one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league at holding on to the ball. That's what I contend to a lot of people that hate on the offensive line a lot. I say, well, you know, he's holding on to that ball, one of the league leaders every year. And we already know mobile quarterbacks tend to get sacked more than less mobile quarterbacks. And he gets himself into a lot of trouble, holding on to the ball too long, not throwing the ball away. And I think Watson's a little bit on the other end of this, because Watson was the best quarterback on the league in throws in under 2.5 seconds last year. He had the best quarterback rating, which is part of what we're kind of wanting on this team. More stuff within the structure of the offense, more stuff on time. Dustin, Team 12 is not saying he wants us to go on 16. He was trying to make a point. Don't twist it around on him. Dark RH, my Rams have similar problems to y'all. My man Jalen Ramsey was openly recruiting Deshaun Watson on IG. I wouldn't blame him, though. We have Jared Goff at quarterback. Yeah, they've got Dark RH. You know this. There's no way. I think it's hard for you guys to even get out from under Goff's contract this offseason. How are you going to bring in a second quarterback contract after you're eating a huge amount of dead money on the front end of that with what you got to do with Goff if you were to release him? He can recruit him all he wants, but there's no chance of Deshaun Watson going to the Rams. Don't have the draft capital, don't have the capital, don't have the salary cap space. Yeah, Dark RH, Dustin's in his full troll mode. Just ignore the troll, Team 12s. Don't let them bait you in. Gino Ba, we have one of the best upcoming receivers in the league, and Pete wants to go back to a run-focused offense. We shouldn't be surprised when DK isn't getting the ball and is going to become a diva. Yeah, the guy just wrapped up having, if you look at his first 2 years of production in this league, I believe there's maybe 1 or 2 receivers in the entire NFL history that had as good a start to their first 2 years in their league. And you're going to have whole games where you don't even go to him and target him, like the first Cardinal game, where everyone's going to tell me, oh, well, Patrick Peterson shut down. He was his daddy. He was in his pocket all game. He didn't target. Russell didn't target him all day until the fourth quarter. And when he did, he was making catches, and he had a touchdown run at the end of the game on a bubble screen that got called back on a BS penalty. You know, there were games this year where Russell just didn't target him, and it should have been feeding him the ball. And then there's other times where he would target him, and the throws would be nowhere near on target. Wild throws. I'm going to get frustrated too as a receiver. A receiver is reliant on somebody else. They're one of the only positions in the sport that's, other than maybe running back you could point to, that's reliant really, really on other people. They can't throw themselves the ball. And again, I want the receiver to want the ball. I want him to want to be that guy. I don't look at it as a detriment or a down thing or a bad thing. I'm glad you don't either, Gino. La Rep, who is the best Seahawks Twitter follow? Oh my goodness. I don't know. I don't have a one go-to guy, La Rep. I don't. It's kind of just a in general thing for me. So Cameron Hughes says, literally pay Bieniemy Russ's salary. Please do anything to bring him in. Anything. I'd be for it, Cameron. I'd be for it. Just throw him a big stack of cash, man. A couple of suitcases of cash. And be like, how about now, enemy? Damien04 Moody. I mean, pretty sure Jason Garrett is on the market, though he's not a great offensive coordinator. He's not terrible. True, Damien. I think he's looked a lot better in retrospect when you look at the Cowboys situation and how it really death spiraled a little bit this season with as much talent as they had on that team. He looks definitely better in retrospect. Garrett's the guy that's held pretty well high in regard throughout the league. He got some good offenses out of those Cowboys team. He certainly knows how to run the football. He would be a guy you might think they would at least be kicking the tires on, but we haven't heard any connection. I don't know if he would get me super excited, though, Damien. I don't know if he's in. What I'm looking for is the outside-the-box guy, the guy that can drive with the new modern rules. The guy that draws the X and O's, plays up and comes up with creative stuff in order to get easy completions. A lot of what you see essentially out of the Chiefs and what they do for Mahomes, where they make the game easier on him by getting those easy completions there for him, allowing things, then the tougher throws aren't quite as tough because he's got all the easy stuff in between. And with Russ, it's a lot of boom or bust stuff with that. They'll either have him just locking in on the deep ball where it's all or nothing, or he does just the short stuff. Kind of weird in that way. But it's a good suggestion. Garrett's not bad. Green fogs are cool. Henry Soto, but he was complaining, yelling on the sideline when he gave him the ball, and that happened. Henry Soto, but he was complaining and yelling on the sideline, and then we gave him the ball, and that happened. We did, Henry, but again, everything's got a little bit of nuance to it. So on the bubble screen that you're talking about, it's not just a matter of DK throws a tantrum, so that means that the Rams are locked in on DK catching a bubble screen. How did the Rams know that was a bubble screen? Because they'd looked on the film and they'd seen out of that trip set going to that side of the field, they run the bubble screen. That's the problem there. It's the offensive coordinator, Henry. It's not to say it's not a good look when DK's going off on the sideline, certainly. But players go off on the sideline. It's an emotional sport. And certainly we've seen plenty of receivers go off on the sideline. So it's not a complete unique situation we've never seen before. But that problem on that play, Henry, goes back again and again to play calling, offensive coordinating, and it being a poor at that. Rodney says Swain didn't have to make a block. If DK would have ran the right route, it wouldn't have been picked. It seems like they didn't even practice that wide receiver screen play. Yeah, there's just no details to it, and that's the lack of detail-centric stuff you don't see offensively. That's when I say when you go pre-snap and disguising things, they don't do that. When I talk about pre-snap motion, I can tell you the two motions that they would run. They would initially come out of the huddle and they'll line a tight end out wide, and then they bring the tight end in line. Or Russell has his running back on one side of him out of shotgun, and he'll flip him over to the other side. Those are their great pre-snap motion moves that they'll do. That's all their little wrinkles that they're running out. And it's paltry. It's meager. It's not enough, not enough. But I agree. There's some blame there to DK Rodney on that. He's got to come back to Russell and make that catch and help Swain a little bit out in the block. But Swain's effort was weak. Random McDaniel, most likely to be moved, Russ or Deshaun. Dark RH, Deshaun's doing everything he can. He's pushing, I think, as hard as you possibly can, because that's usually going to get a player out of town. Dark RH says Pete Carroll's the Doc Rivers of the NFL, always one of the best teams of the regular season, then always loses within the first 1 to 2 rounds. Might be a solid comparison than Dark H, because I think didn't Doc he did at least get one championship with the Celtics, right? And Carroll's got the one championship, so maybe that's an apt comparison. Good Team 12s. Don't let Dustin pull you in. You know his game. You know his game, man. Jeff Raines, Adam Gase. At some point, I could see the offense stutter while the defense starts killing every team. Then when the offense loses games, imagine Adams eventually mean-mugging Gase. It would be great. Him looking at him and Gase with his eyes just super wide, trying not to look at him, which is going to be hard because his eyes are so wide open that his vision catches a lot of peripheral stuff, So he's like, Jamal, stop looking at me like that, man. Why are you looking at me like that, Jamal? Stop it. BJ, do you think the Seahawks are any closer to finding the next offensive coordinator? I think my gut instinct on this, BJ, says that they already know who they want. And they're just doing the look of being exhaustive because they know there's a little bit of pressure from the fan base to get this right, that they didn't get the Schottenheimer hire right. that the offense was a problem last year as the year winded down. So I think there's a little bit of PR stuff going on here. But I think it's going to be Dave Canales when it's all said and done. Damian, I don't see Russ taking a pay cut. More likely Hawks get Stafford instead in my eyes. Could be with that, Damian. There's a way that could definitely play out like that if Seattle went in the direction of moving on from Russ. I think, though, Damian, the key part of this and how Seattle looks at it when they look at, hey, we got to 2 Super Bowls back in the 2010s or whatever. How did we do it? Built a great defense, good special teams, and we had a running game, and we had a young quarterback on a rookie deal, a talented young rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, young quarterback on a rookie deal. So being that that's the case, I think that they're going to look to try to replicate that if they try to go in a different direction from Russ. They'll go full whole hog on that. And if you're bringing in Stafford, even if he takes down a discount, what are you going to be paying him? $20 million a year? And if you're only going to be paying Stafford $15 million or less than what you'd be paying Russ, then why we trade him in the first place? Dark RH, don't get caught up with him, man. Dustin the Troll will draw you in, I'm telling you. August de Chaprin says, shaking my head, we just need to win. We do, man. Henry says, I'm not saying DK is the problem. I'm saying he has to get his attitude in check and be more patient, and I think we could have won that game. Maybe, Henry. I mean, are you saying then that you think DK is the reason we lost that football game? Do you think that game's on him? Do you think the game really comes down to just one play? A game that's got 80-some-odd plays throughout the course of a game comes down to just one play? This is some of my problem with the people that point to the Super Bowl and the loss in the Super Bowl and it all being this one play. No, it wasn't. The defense gave up a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. That's why you lost that Super Bowl. Yeah, it ended on a play, but that ain't the reason you lost it. And that's where you got to come down to, Henry. It's a full game that you got to take the data from, not just a single play. But I agree with you. He does need to calm that stuff down, and I'd expect it to. He's a young guy, Henry. They come in this league 20, 21 years old. They might be still a little bit immature. It's not unusual at that age, not unusual for a player that age. I think you'll see it start to come along with him. To me, he strikes me as a guy who's got his head on his shoulders correct. Cameron, if we had a nickel every time Brandon called Freddie Swain Brett Swain, I'd be making more money than Russ. True. Facts. Team 12s, he uses alternate accounts. I'm telling you, man, just ignore him. Cameron Hughes says, I think KJ's looking for $10 million a year. Yeah, and he's not going to get it. I think when I heard his comments on that, Cameron, I'm like, you're dreaming, buddy. You're dreaming. No one's going to, I don't see anyone giving him that. He might make what he made last year in the 7 range, the 6 to 7 range, but outside linebackers in 4-3 schemes aren't terribly valued because they don't get sacks and they usually don't get a lot of interceptions. So they're really there to be tacklers and guys that can be decent in coverage. It's good. It's a skill. It's something you need. But again, him a year older, a year slower, having a 1 career year that didn't match what we'd seen over the past couple of years, I'm not putting that money on him. Gino says, Lockett's one of my favorite players on the Seahawks. Would suck to see him go. It would. It would suck to see him go. And it's not about me not liking him, of course, Gino. It's just a matter of when I look at the salary cap situation with the Seahawks this offseason, they are going to need to find some places that they can create some salary cap room. There's only a couple of guys that you can kind of clear off the books to create that kind of room. And unfortunately, he happens to be one of them. Tiger Duh. So Carson's done, you think? Yeah, Tiger does. So it breaks down like this. Right now, you currently have the 17th amount most of cap space available to you with the Dunlap trade that you made midseason. This is on a salary cap that's slowing down, of course, to what looks like about $180 million or so. They are going to sign Jamal Adams to a contract extension this offseason. No, it's not going to be $20 million. No, it's not going to be $18 million. It's probably going to be a shade above $16 million per year. So they will lower down probably the first year cap hit of that down to about $8 or $9 million, if not a little bit lower. That's going to then put you in the realm of about the 23 or 24th amount most of cap space. You'll have about $9 million to spend at that point. You don't have the money to then give Carson even a 2-year, $12 million deal with him at that point. Eats up all that space that you still need for salary, signing draft picks, and other free agents. This is also part of the reason why I say that they might have to move a player or two to create some more cap room. But I say it is right now for me about a 1% chance that they bring back Chris Carson. 1%. Not going to happen. Jeff Ryan says at $10 million, KJ should be brought back on. At $10 million, KJ shouldn't be brought back on. I read that, Jeff, like you said, should be. I was like, oh, no, Jeff, no. But I misread it. We need cornerbacks more than just keeping KJ. Wish it wasn't true, but money could be better spent. Well, I do agree with you on the respect of there's no way you can sign KJ for $10 million or anywhere near it. You just can't afford to do it. Just no way, no how. I think they do need to address the cornerback position and bringing on more talent. But I would still always argue, Jeff, that the cornerback position is one that you can go cheaper on. The running back, the cornerback positions are the two top positions on this team. I would look to save money if you can save money. The reason being, Jeff, that they play so much zone coverage. And you go and you get a sticky cornerback. Remember last year, Jeff, everybody was pining for Darius Slay. Oh, let's go get Darius Slay. Darius Slay, he'll be amazing in this game. He'll be amazing. And I was trying to get everybody to pop their brakes. Because they go, Darius Slay's a man-on-man corner. He's sticky. He's sitting in the back pocket of guys. What's he going to do here playing zone? Let's go get Jalen Ramsey. Let's go get Jalen Ramsey. This is what other people were saying to cut, a year and a half ago. And I go, what? Guy, he's in the Seattle Seahawks scheme in Jacksonville, doesn't like it because he's playing zone, wants to go to a man-on-man team, and you think he's going to want to be traded to Seattle? No. So I agree, Jeff. We got to upgrade the talent, but it's about finding a zone cover corner, somebody with that skill set in particular. And I think you can actually go kind of cheap with it. Beef up the pass rush. You can take care of those guys a little bit easier. Cameron says, I was hyped for Lockett after the draft because returner is one of my favorite positions. Screw the NFL for killing the kickoff return. So after the Broncos preseason game, I was an instant fan. Yeah, he lit it up in that preseason, Cameron. You remember the Mario Kart meme with Lockett? If you guys get a chance, YouTube that. It's funny as hell. Lockett doing one of his returns, and they have like the Mario Kart meme in there, and it was hilarious. Jose Rodriguez, good grief. He's the head coach. He has to know everything. He's got to know how to manage games, but does he have to be an expert in everything? It's to me, Jose, a little bit of the where coaching has gone, where it's become very specialized. So take a look at Dark RH's Rams, for instance. When they brought in McVay, they knew this was one of those young mastermind offensive coordinators that I talk about. So what did they do? Did they have him also take the reins defensively? Did they have him also hire his defensive coordinator? No. They brought in Wade Phillips, a steady old hand who could run the show on that side of the ball. I think that's the better model to go at as the coach is and how it's broken down in that. You bring in a head coach who's got a certain predilection, a certain expertise to a certain side of the ball. You let him lean on that and help his coordinators out on that side of the ball. And then you have another side of the ball, which he just doesn't touch and it's not his expertise. That's I think, the better route to go. I think the Rams were smart for doing that a couple years ago, and it's one of the reasons they were able to get to that Super Bowl. August de Shrapnen says, all good players from last year are trash. No cap this year. Oh, we got a cap this year, $108 million. Damian Moody says, Hawks could sign Wayne Gallman of the New York Giants. Aggressive back, and Giants probably won't be able to pay him the money he's asking with Saquon and DJ. Question will come down on that, Damian, same problem that we were talking about with Chris Carson. Where are you going to get the money to spend on a running back? Gallman's going to want even a 3-year, $5 million deal. That's going to leave you with about $3 million of workable functional cap space at that point. Hard to see them do that. Cameron Hughes says, I went to school with Travis Etienne's cousin last year. You like him, Cameron? You like Travis? Team 12 says, lock it to the Jets for our first back, and then we sign T.Y. Hilton for wide receiver 2, Alejandro Villanueva for left tackle, Joe Thuney for offensive guard, and then send Quandre Diggs to the Broncos for 2002, 3rd and 6th. I like it. Hope you like it. I'm on board with it if you can get the teams to give you that kind of draft compensation, Team 12s, but I'm probably going to say that with Tyler Lockett, the top of that you're going to get in return for him is going to be a second-round pick. You might be able to get that. You might even be able to get a high second-round pick for him, but probably a second-round pick nonetheless. Both those two guys, Thuney and Villanueva, I would expect to probably be on the open market, so you could go and sign them. And I like Villanueva as that model. Rather than going in a young left tackle that you eventually have to pay or you're not certain of what you're getting in the draft, why not get something like of what you got with Dwayne Brown? Just a certain commodity out there. A little bit older, maybe not as great as they once were, but still upper-level left tackle playing at nearly a Pro Bowl level. I like that as a strategy. And then with Quandre Diggs, you're not going to get more for him than you got from him a couple years ago being the 5th-round pick. I know he's had a couple good years here now, and I think he's gone to a couple Pro Bowls, but I just don't know that there's going to be a lot of value for him. As well as I thought the Broncos had 2 Team 12s, pretty top-notch safeties, didn't they? I thought they had two really good safeties there. Could be wrong on that. Random McDaniel, what would a legitimate package look like for Russ? Is it a Herschel Walker type deal? Yeah, I think that it would break down to basically, I think, three first-round picks plus. But if it's a number 2 overall pick like with the Jets, maybe it's more like two first-round picks at that point and, a third. So if it's really a high first-round pick, that's going to take the third one of those away. But I'd expect you to be able to get up into that high top 3 status and an additional first-round pick and an additional a third. So if we're talking New York Jets, we flip them to the Jets. We get their number 2 overall. Maybe we get back our first-round pick this year, and we would get back a third-round pick, maybe our third-round pick back this year. I think that's probably the most likely. Maybe you can find a team that you can snooker and get a little bit more for it. But I don't think you're going to get anything. I forget what Walker was with, Randall. I do, but I think that would be actually pretty close as a package to what Walker got. Maybe you got a little bit more for him at that time, but running backs were so much more valued back then as well. Cameron Hughes says Trey Sermon is my favorite running back in the draft. Also, Jamar Jefferson is a sleeper. I'm just starting to do my draft checks, Cameron. So last night I was looking at the top 5 backs, and I looked at the top 5 tight ends. So I'm kind of just starting to go through some of the players. Man, there's some weird. There's this one kid out of I forget what he plays for, one of the top 5 backs that they had on the list. His kid is he's a good back, but the second he gets into the open field, he goes from like lowering down to getting straight up and down. And he's running with almost like his back up to try to get as much speed as he can. It's so wild to watch where he gets so low behind his pads, and then open field, he's just taller. Strange. There's another running back I was watching last night who, and he's only a big play machine. He gets in the open field, he's probably going to run a 4.35 at the combine. Can't remember his name right now, top of my head, but interesting running back class so far. Very interesting, and it's a good year for us to need running backs, I think. I think there's a couple guys in here, Cameron, that'll be pretty nice little fits for us, and we're probably going to look for somebody somewhere in this draft. Bird of Prey, Pete Carroll hasn't reached the NFC Championship Conference game since the 2014 season when they lost Super Bowl 49 and has only won 3 total playoff games since. Solid point, Bird of Prey, and it's true. Facts. Team 12 says we should sign Leonard Fournette, Jeff Wilson, and Philip Lindsay for running back, and then Marquise Blair can take over for Quandre Diggs. Oh, you're saying based off the other trade that you were talking about making. I'd be in favor of Marquise getting the helmet free safety, especially with Diggs and Lockett are the 2 guys that you could flip this offseason who both do carry a base salary this year that you could clear some cap space from. I believe the combination of releasing both of them, you'd clear $16 million or so in cap space, which would be absolutely like in normal off seasons, that would be like actually clearing like $25 million in cap space because the number of players that are going to be available, because the amount of teams that are already set to be over the cap, because the salary cap is lowered down to $180 million. Tiger Duh, how long do you see Wilson staying? Tiger Duh, I'd like to be able to answer that question after I see who the offensive coordinator is, because I think I could make a lot more of an accurate assessment at that time. So I'm going to answer your question, but do it with that caveat. Then I want to see who they sign. I think the offensive coordinator is going to show me. Right now, with the way that this is going, it looks like they're going to sign a run-centric guy who's not going to make Wilson really happy. I would expect him at that season to go one more year if this plays out to type, if this holds true. Damian Moody says, Team 12s, I think you get Wayne Gallman for cheaper, and at this point, I think Gallman is a better back than Fournette. I don't know if Fournette's going to cost a lot on the open market, Damian. I mean, nobody was willing to claim him on waivers this year to just have him as a one-year flyer. And the one thing I do wonder with Fournette, I know there's a lot of people in the chat not super high on him, and they're down on him big time, but the one thing I do like with him, Damian, is that I feel like he hasn't been put in the right system to let him do what he needs to do. Jaguars, he was all of their offense. Everything was relying on him. There was no other threats. Teams could bring the 8th man into the box. Then he goes to Tampa Bay, who really wants to just throw the ball with Tom and attack down the field, and they've already got a little bit of a love affair with Ronald Jones. So he just doesn't get as much of an opportunity with them. I just think he needs a good opportunity, a fresh start and good opportunity. And he certainly fits again into that mold that we talk about, which is Damian, Coach Carroll, Marshawn Lynch came through here and it set something in his heart, like concrete drawing the image of Marshawn Lynch in his heart. And he's got this mold now of running back that he is fascinated with and will not leave. And so every running back who comes through here, for the most part, fits into that mold. And the one time he goes outside of the mold and drafts highly because of it, and going for a guy like Rashad Penny, it's bit them on the butt. So I think he doubles back down on the mold and continues to just stay fascinated with the Marshawn Lynch type. James Black, look at Doug Peterson a couple years after winning a Super Bowl. Yep. Some of that is with Doug Peterson, and the situation with that is, and he didn't manage things great there necessarily, but I do come back to it with them where they, look, some of their guys got a little bit older. They shot up, got their spot, got in the Super Bowl, and then some of the prime guys like your Jason Peters types, like your Kelsey types, started to get a little bit long in the tooth. And especially with an offensive line and a young quarterback, things can start to look really bad when the quarterback doesn't have any time to throw and everything's just completely in his face all the time. They've got some problems with some of the things they've done drafting-wise, but I think still Doug Peterson's a pretty good coach. I certainly wouldn't have been I probably would have been pretty okay with him as far as an offensive coordinator here. Augustin Deschrapton says, I like how we're talking about football and then all this drama is happening. Cameron Hughes, making the playoffs and getting beat convincingly everywhere in the first and second round is doing the bare minimum with our talent. Can't argue with that. Oh, shoot. Got behind the chat again. Behind the chat. Where are we at here? Randall says we will know there's trouble in paradise if we get a Shefty Twitter bomb. Reports are Russell Wilson not on the same page with the team on the hiring of the offensive coordinator. You're absolutely correct, Randall. That's why I think this is so key to know who they're going to hire. It's going to tell us so much organizationally about the next 3, 4, 5 years, who this offensive coordinator hire is. And it's so odd to say, but it's absolutely the truth because it goes one of two ways. It's either a pro Russell guy or a pro Carroll guy. And based on the way that these guys are talking in the media, there seems to be two different versions of those guys. Chris Miner, I just watched the video of the Cleveland Browns getting into the playoffs for the first time in 25 years. Not easy, been doing for almost 10 years. Not easy, been doing for almost 10 years straight. We're okay. Not settling, or knocking 12s. Not settling, or knocking 12s. Yeah, I can get where the perspective is of those folks, Chris. Like I've said, the folks that say I'm okay with being a consistent winner. And if we don't get to the Super Bowl or really push for being a Super Bowl team every year, but we can be consistently winning, I say time and time again, I'm not going to hate on you for that. I don't expect you to be on where my level is of expectation level for wanting a Lombardi. That's my personal fanhood. That's personally what I want to see. And in watching the consistent winning over the last 5 years, it hasn't always given me a sense of satisfaction when the season finishes. It's felt like a lot of times like we should be better than this. As I think Cameron Hughes just pointed out on this, are we getting the most out of our talent? Are we taking advantage of a quarterback in the middle of his Hall of Fame career, in the middle of the prime of his career? Are we taking advantage of that, all of that sufficiently? Are we really doing it? Or are we just kind of treading along? Are we making as many poor mistakes as we're making right moves? And that's where I sort of fall into with it, Chris. But I completely get and understand people being okay, especially comparing against other franchises and organizations. I will say, Chris, when you gotta compare up against a Cleveland or Cincinnati to find your happiness as a fan, you're probably having to squint pretty hard about what's going on a bit. Team 12s, yeah, Barry always comes in with the big donos. Team 12s, Barry and Randall McDaniel, these guys come in hard. The Rocket, if we are a Super Bowl team, we need a Barry Sanders 2.0. Oh, Rocket. Oh, Rocket, I'd love it. You know Barry Sanders is my favorite running back of all time, Rocket. So I love Barry Sanders. Love him. Dark RH, the Hawks Nest. First game he struggled was Arizona versus Seahawks. Then he bounced back for San Francisco, I think. Then the Bills game was the real turning point where he struggled. Then he was completely out of it. Yep. That sounds about right as far as your timeline on Russell Wilson's struggles there, Dark Rage. So that's how I saw it. I think the Bills game was the turning point. Bills game, he still had moments where he played good, but there were some throws in that game, the fumbles, the lack of seeing the blitzes pre-snap and recognizing where it was coming from. A lot of the house of cards were starting to fall in that game. Danny McCormick, how you doing, Danny? He said, who is your dream head coach if Pete were to get fired all of a sudden? I've said it before. I know people hate me repeating this, Danny, but I come back to time and time again Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley's had multiple quarterbacks coming through Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield and Hurts, Kyler Murray, and he's been able to structure an offense around that, because that's the part of this that I think the offensive coordinator needs to do who comes in here, who would be that offensive mastermind. Not only do they have to be a great X's and O's guy, they have to understand the limitations, but also the pluses of Russell Wilson's game, because he is not a traditional great quarterback. And that it's this, he does good, and that he does good. You got to kind of, mix the bag up a little bit and look at the wide, broader view of it. So they've got to fit their offense within some of his limitations. What are Russell's limitations? Not always great on the traditional screen game. He's going to be dropping back, big 6'5" lineman with his hands up. Probably not going to get that ball up over the running back. You're going to have to run those screens out to the side from time to time. Intermediate passing game is not really his strength. There's some stats that came out the last week showing Russell Wilson in the intermediate passing game over the last 3, 4, 5 years. It's not been where he's good. Just not his plus. Deep throws, yes. Intermediate game, not so much. Short drag routes across the field. Can't see over the lineman. Got to build that out of it. So I think a guy could do that. The right kind of offensive mind could do that. Lincoln Riley showed an ability to do that. He's very creative, which is also what I'm looking for, and what you'd have to do with building on a quarterback who's got, it's not that Russell's completely limited. It's just that you got to understand what he does good and what he doesn't do good, and then build off of that. Be smart with it, which I don't think they've done to a degree, but not to the degree I think Lincoln would take it. I think you'd take that up a notch if you brought him in. So he would probably be my dream guy if we could bring him in. BJ, should we play football like the Packers? Well, look, the Packers attacked the Rams in the way that we should have attacked them. Short passing game, moving Rodgers to the edges, still staying committed to the running game, keeping them off balance, unpredictable. They did a lot of that. I think the Packers also benefited from the fact that we know that Aaron Donald was probably playing with a broken rib or two, because Russell Wilson broke his ribs. Russell's strong. Yeah, it's in the respect of what the Packers did from a model standpoint, BJ, where they had a coach who was resolutely in his mode of running his offense in the same old boring fashion like we have seen up until this point. And then they went out and got LaFleur, who was more of the young, smarter mind in how he attacked things, just being smart and intelligent, more leaning into intelligence rather than just leaning into, we're going to show you what we're going to do, and we're just going to be better than you. Come on. The sport's too close. The talent's too toys. This ain't college. You don't got 5-star athletes to blow people off the ball in that way. You got to be a little bit more inventive than that. Where are we at? The Rocket, do you think if we had Dexter Jackson and Ndamukong Suh, we would be a threat? I don't know if either of those two guys themselves would add anything onto it, Rocket. I think Suh at this point is going to be a rotational defensive tackle here pretty soon. I think he'd probably be our best defensive tackle on our team next to Jarran Reed. Jarran Reed might be a little bit better than Suh at this point, but Suh's probably right there with him. I'd love to see them bring Suh in. He's coming in a couple off seasons for visits where they just didn't quite have the money to give him, and he was trying to go to the highest bidder at times. But if he's available in particular, Rocket, I'd love to see him brought in. He would be an asset to that defensive line. Randall says, I think the point regarding stagnation is we haven't been a threat in the playoffs. No NFC championship game, never a threat. Andy Reid got whacked 4 straight championship games plus a Super Bowl appearance. He did. And there's different levels of this, Randall. And certainly Reid and those teams fit into the same paradigm of the Buffalo Bills of the 90s and the Minnesota Vikings of the 70s, the Purple People Eaters. But I think that those are also rarities in the sport overall. And I think if you are getting to a championship conference game, you are pushing that rim. You are competing to get into a Super Bowl. And those Eagles teams probably should have gotten there more than they did, probably should have done more than they did. They ran up against the Patriot juggernaut when they finally had their best version of the best team that they had, which is unfortunate. But we seem to be a cut below that, I think, which is to your point a little bit. There's different levels of this stuff, and we're not at that championship competing level. We're at the playoff competing level. Henry says, do you think we should keep Jamal long-term? I 100% think we should keep Jamal long-term. I think the fan base, some of them want him to be this cover guy, which is strong safeties don't tend to be cover guys anyway. He's got a lot of skill sets he brings to the football field, Henry, and I have said this continuously. I'm going to say it again. If you can't, as a football team, find a way to use a Hall of Fame defensive player in the middle of their prime, and you can't find the right way to use that player, that's on you as a coaching staff. That's not on the player. I think he had a pretty solid year last year playing through all of those injuries. I don't know if Henry, you've seen some of the horrific images he posted of his surgery on those fingers, but I think the man's a warrior. I think he's a leader. I think he's a benefit to this team. Dark RH, Hawks Nest, what I meant, that all teams in our division either have a coaching problem or a quarterback problem or some variation of both. Okay, I agree with you there, Dark RH. Sorry, I misunderstood. Rams and 49ers, quarterback problems. Seahawks, Arizona, coaching problems. Fair. Dustin, you don't know. Bringing in a new head coach would potentially get us into a next round. None of us know that. Cameron, them dominates. Chat's lively tonight. Let's see here. Let's see. Damian Moyes, what would I think of signing Wayne Gallman? I like Wayne Gallman. Hard runner. I just don't think Damian, he's going to get paid. Somebody's going to give him probably a 3-year, $18 million deal or whatever. And it's the same deal that probably right around where Carson is. Carson maybe makes a little bit more money, but it's not going to be a significant difference. And you just don't have the money to spend on a running back. I think you're more better suited to go a little bit cheaper there. They're just so much against the cap, Damian. So much against the cap, and there's not a lot of running backs in this draft class, in this free agent class. It's a very thin free agent class for running backs. All the prime guys, the McCaffreys, the Kamuras, the Henrys, they all signed their big long-term deals, so they're off the market. Potluckology, you ain't getting Watson, please. I agree. Don't think we are. BJ, we need to get an identity because we haven't had one since the LOB and beast mode. I agree. We're caught a little bit in between right now, BJ, where we've got this Hall of Fame quarterback. Part of Carroll is probably thinking he wants to let him throw and take advantage of it, but then Carroll also winds back into getting safe and wanting to play back to the defense and shorten games and run the football. And it's the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that's probably fighting inside of Carroll, and you saw it play out this year, quite literally first 8 games versus the last 8 games. So, I agree. You're not doing yourselves any favor as a football club when you're not choosing a road. You're driving down the middle of the 2 roads rather than on an actual road. And that's where I think that they find themselves right now, where there's not a clean, distinct vision, it would seem like, for what they're trying to do and how they're trying to get there. Last offseason, for instance, they said, pass rush is the priority. We've got to address pass rush. Pass rush is everything right now. This is what they tell us in the press conferences. This is what they tell us they're going to go about it. Well, then we look at the offseason, what they do. They let Jadeveon Clowney go, who was their only effective pass rusher the prior year. They let Jefferson go, who was maybe their second most effective pass rusher. Then Al Woods go, who might have been their third most effective pass rusher from the prior year. And then what do? They signed 2 of the bargain basement guys on free agency, a little bit older, and Benson Mayowa and Irvin. And Mayowa was okay for some of the year. Irvin got injured. But that was them fixing what was the prime problem by their own mouths for the team going into the offseason. That's not a clear vision it that way. That's you saying one thing and doing another. And I think that they do need to do a little bit more of understanding identity is important. What are we? What do we want to be? What type of team exactly do we want to be? And then stick to it. Potluckology, Wilson's the man and you're crying. I don't know who's crying. The Rocket, you think Chad Henne of the Chiefs will be any good this weekend? The Rocket, Mahomes is going to play, right? Like, he's going to play. And he's a functional quarterback in this league. He's played for years. He's not going to get overwhelmed by the situation, but he's not going to be as effective as Mahomes would be either. And I would certainly give the edge then over to the Bills at that point if Mahomes doesn't play in that game. Randall says the running game is key to all the great quarterbacks. That's why Marino never won. Elway got Davis, then rings. Outrun style is horse sucked. Our run style is horse sucks. Needs to scrap all the shotgun runs, especially third down. Yeah, a little bit more under center. How great would it be, Randall, if they actually went out and found a good blocking fullback as well? I know it's a position dying off in the sport, but the Niners have used Kyle Juszczyk to a great degree over the last couple of years, signing him in free agency from the Baltimore Ravens, knowing what they were going to get in him as an all-purpose utility kind of fullback. I'd be interested to see what you could do with maybe doing a little bit more of that stuff. And back in the beast mode days, we ran a lot of the I formation stuff, right? A lot of the power stuff, Russell Wilson under center. Jared Goffrey, why do you think the Hawks were such sticklers with getting good pass rushers last offseason? I think our D could make a huge leap if we get some guys this year. Well, I think they were sticklers in saying they wanted to do that, Jared, but if you really look at it, what are all the moves that they made for pass rushers last offseason? You know, you went and you signed the two guys I mentioned, Mayo and Irvin. Then you went in the draft and you drafted Darrell Taylor using a second, third round pick for him. And then you got Alton Robinson, who's actually the brightest spot of all that bunch. Now, that's 4 moves you've made to address a pass rush theoretically. How much are you counting on the 5th round pick? Well, probably not much. You're hoping, but you're not counting. How much are you going to count on a 32-year-old guy like Irvin with a lot of tread taken off his tires, or a guy like Betsameo who's never been more than just at best a situational pass rusher? They went light on it. They went cheap on it. They didn't go after anybody that was prime, and there was a lot of names out on the market they could have gone out and grabbed. You know, and there's a lot of names this offseason too. So I would echo your sentiments on this, and that, Jared, they can go and readdress this offseason. They can fix this problem if they truly, fully embrace the fact that they need to just hit it hard. I've mentioned before, last offseason after the Packers game, I said the 2 things we need to address are the pass rush and the offensive line. Just laser focusing on those 2 things. They didn't really do it. They did a little bit on the offensive line, not much on the defensive line. You could do the same thing this offseason, just flip it. Laser focus on the offensive line, then the defensive line. Figure out the running back and cornerback stuff, but if you really address those, I think you would go a lot further to just building out the base of this team, the trenches of this team where we really want to win football games. Alpine Blue, what are your thoughts of trading Wilson? We would save lots of money, we could draft like crazy, and we could then run the ball and have a good defense. I'm intrigued by it because I'm tired of being caught in between, Alpine. I'm tired of being caught to where we want to pay the franchise quarterback $35 million, but then we don't want to give him the keys to the car. We want to put him in the back seat. You know, it's driving Mr. Wilson here is what we're trying to do. We're trying to put the baba in his mouth and the little, the thing on the bikes that you got, the training wheels on the bikes. We're not taking the training wheels off. You know, and if that's going to be the case, then that's what I call a misallocation of resources. I love Russell Wilson. The ideal for me is we bring in an offensive coordinator and we let him flourish, and who's really, like I've said, the mastermind and who can make this go. They're not going to probably do that, though, Alpine. They're probably going to go for the boring, safe, going to be a run ahead. I know how to command a running game type offensive coordinator, and that doesn't do a lot for me. But with that said, if that's the route they're going to go, then yeah, I think you've got to move on at that point. I think you've got to move on. It's begrudgingly arriving at this place. I don't want to say that, but this is the way this is playing out. This is what we're seeing come to bloom in front of us, so to speak. And you're not ever going to ask Russ to cook again at this point, I think, Alpine. I think Pete got traumatized by last season midway through the year when suddenly the turnover started to take a ratchet up a bit. And maybe he just doesn't think even Russell can run that kind of offense. Maybe that's also what Carroll thinks. We don't really know for sure, but there's certain indicators that might be the case. So yeah, at this point, I don't want to trade him, but I think I'm going to be begrudgingly have to be in the camp of saying, yeah, it's going to be probably time to trade him because Seattle wants to go back to running the football. They want to go back to having their quarterback throw 27 times a football game. You know, Mahomes out there throwing 40 times a game. Russell's going to throw 26, 27 times a game. Misallocation of resources. Randall says, would Pete talk to Jody Allen prior to trading Russ? How hands-off is she? My indicator on this would be I don't know for sure on that, Randall, so I'm making a wide guess. My guess on that is that Jody is completely hands-off based off of everything we've read. She's not holding the front office accountable, Carroll accountable. She wants to do right by her brother's legacy. These are 2 hires, being Carroll and Schneider, that her brother hired on and brought to this team. She's given both of them now extensions over the last 6 months, or signed off on extensions for both of them over the last 6 months. Despite there being some issues here and there, I think at the end of the day, she sees the record, sees the division title, sees they're still doing good, goes, just keep doing what you're doing, guys. I'm over here worrying about this other stuff I'm more interested in. And I think that's where it's sort of kind of sitting right now. Cameron Hughes, don't forget, Green Frog's cool is probably also Dustin. Puckology, they said the Rams could get, they said the Rams couldn't get Ramsey either. You're right, Potluck Ecology, you're right. Maybe I should hold off in saying that there's a way that you guys can make it happen. But when you look at the cap this year, I can't even say your name. I'll call you Luckology. When you look at the cap this year, it's going down to 180. Rams have made a lot of go-for-it-now moves over the last few years. Dead money is a carrying through every single season. And with Goff and where that contract's hitting right now, all of that bonus money accelerates in whatever you do with him. Trade him, release him, whatever. All the bonus money accelerates first over the 4-year period playing out as it would normally play out under a contract. You've got to factor that into if you make a trade. Like, for instance, I factored in with Russell Wilson. The reason Seattle could potentially trade Russell Wilson this offseason is it's only a negative $7 million cap hit. If you're to move off from Goff, I think he's somewhere in the neighborhood of $22 to $25 million of dead money hit would accelerate instantaneously on a $180 million cap. That's going to then take you down to $155 million. Then you're going to bring Deshaun Watson, who though you're not on the hook for his bonus money because that accelerates on the Texans when he gets traded. You're still going to be on the hook for him at probably about a $20 million base. So now, again, you can see where we're at now. $135 million to build out the rest of the roster. You're paying 2 quarterbacks now somewhere in the neighborhood of, oh my goodness, $45 million at that point, $50 million, $55 million between the two of them. I just don't think it's feasible. Rocket, are you by any chance into the CFL in the offseason? Our neighbor, the BC Lions, do start in June. I haven't been the Rocket. I like some of these new leagues they had created that look like they're going to get killed off now here in the mainland. But if I'm in a bar and they're on TV, I'll check them out. It's still a well-played football game. It's still good football to watch. Augusta, thank you for watching. You have a good night. 8037, time to trade Bobby. Could help the Hawks. Bobby is in his prime. 2 years left on his deal. Would be perfect time for it. Can get $13.4 million post-June trade cap and picks. Also, Brooks can play inside linebacker. Yes, you're right. Yeah, it's a possible target this offseason, as you pointed out. You can save some money by moving off of him this offseason, AD. They drafted Brooks to be his heir apparent, and he played pretty well throughout this year, especially in the run game. So Seattle could certainly look to go down that line if as a possibility. I would say Lockett, Quandre Diggs, Bobby are the 3 guys that you could save money from moving off of to create the cap space. I don't know that it's likely to happen, though, AD. I think Bobby's probably going to be sitting here for a little bit of time. Let me get to a couple of these donations I might have missed out. Jeff Rhines, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, totally agreeing on cornerback in Seattle. Would be great to find a gem or 2 in the rough, then allocate money elsewhere on the roster. Thanks for the stream today. Well, thank you for the $5 donation, Jeff. I'm glad we're in agreement on this. And yeah, it's when you've got a cornerback that's in the scheme, to me, what you want to look for, Jeff, is you want to look for the guy out there that can play zone corner, right? Protect against the deep ball is what you're going to ask him to do. Play cover 3 a majority amount of the time. Protect against that deep ball, and from time to time, take your shots on routes. Be a film study expert. Understand route combinations. Know when you can bail on your cover 3 responsibility to come jump a slant route because you know the indicators pre-snap of what to look for. Find corners like that, like we had, let's say, in a Richard Sherman or Brandon Browner or Byron Maxwell. You found it once before in the later rounds. Why can't you find it again? I don't see why not at all. So I agree. Go that route. Then you can go cheaper there. Then you can pay the money in other places. Go cheap in one area. Get some talent there. Protect them with the other players around. Protect them with the safeties they have around them. Protect them with the front 4 that can generate pass rush. They'll be just fine. One more donation. And if I miss your question on this, I just want to make sure I get the donations. Brian Roberts with a $5 donation. Thank you too, Brian. I salute you, sir. You and Jeff. Thank you so much. He says, good stream as always. Good job, mods. Go Hawks. Go Hawks, Brian. I do appreciate you. Thank you for that $5 donation. You are the man. All right. And if I do miss anything on the chat, let me know here, folks. So let's see. What I got behind here. Dark Right says, according to a certain somebody, they would be interested in trading Goff and picks for Watson. Me personally, I didn't think this is going to happen. I'm just saying what sources are saying. There's a feasible way that they could work that way, Dark RH. And as I was just running the math right now, it does only technically speaking, I think, come out to, because I'm going off my memory on this with the Goff hit, but I think it was 22 to 25 million. Then you've got the $20 million of Deshaun Watson. So it does put it to $45 million, which would be the Rams paying next year the most to the quarterback position in the entire NFL. That would be a little exorbitant, but that's just off of what? $40 million that the second most teams paying to their quarterback position. It would be tight. It would be tight for you guys because already, Dark Arch, you guys are up against it with your lack of draft capital over recent years. How long has it been since you had a first-round pick? You've done well in the later rounds, but it would make it tough for you guys. But I'll say this, Dark Arch, I'd make that move on the Rams. I'll take that chance. They know Goff's not going to be the guy. They know no one's going to give them any real value for him. So if you've got to flip some future first-round picks and then Goff gives you some value back to bring in a guy like Watson, be a fantastic move for your team to pull off. Arzos, I've been hearing a lot of rumors of Watson going to the 49ers. If he does, what does this mean to us in the division? Will we be in last because the Rams, Cardinals are only getting better? Potentially Azos. I mean, it would give you a wide range of possibilities that could happen. I don't think that there'd be a clear-cut top dog. Watson would probably be really good with the Niners. I mean, it would be fantastic with the Niners. And they're getting a lot of guys back next year that they lost this year. On top of the fact they're going to have a really high pick this year that they could utilize to trade out with. I mean, they got something that's pretty juicy that they can dangle in front of Houston for Houston to go get their new quarterback of the future. So it would make them dangerous. All those teams in the division are dangerous as those. I don't know what the Rams' top-end side is when you consider, again, does Donald start to drop off in his play at some point here? And then how does that affect the rest of that defense? And are they able to figure out what they're going to do with Goff? Because he seems to have been a little bit broken as the year went along. Seahawks, H&L. Creative coaches don't want to coach for the Seahawks as long as Pete's there. Lots of them already opted out or picked another team. In the end, it's Pete's offense. There seems to be indicators of this, Seahawks, H&L. There does seem to be some indicators of this that the scuttlebutt is that, essentially, why are you going to come there and why would you? If you're going to come there and be an offensive coordinator and you're trying to be that maestro and do your game plan and unveil it in your waves for the defense to set them up for when you want to set them up, and you got your coach coming in every once in a while saying, hey, run a little power 19 on this one. I was going to run some trip set slants so that I could build it off of a pump and go later on the game, though, Coach Carroll. Yeah. Power 19. But I'm setting up the slant and go, the sluggo. I'm going to do this. Do sluggo for the power 19. Okay. Power 19, Russ. That's how I see it playing out. And man, that would get old as an offensive coordinator real quick. You'd be saying, what right does this guy have to say this? What are you? You're not an offensive mind, Carroll. Especially when he goes around. Imagine if he gives you a call like power 19 and then it's like a negative 2-yard run and then you look back at him and he's like, just shrugs and goes, wrong on this one, I guess. Puckology, Goff beat Wilson with a broken thumb. He did. Hawks Nest, game picks for this championship weekend, asked Dustin. Bucks versus Packers and Bills versus Chiefs. All right, I'm going to go with the Packers. I think it's this year to get to the Super Bowl for them. They're just playing so doggone good. With the Bills and Chiefs, I'm going to be a surprise on this one, Dustin. I'm going to go with the Bills. I think the Bills and Packers have that momentum. They're playing a certain way. They got a certain look to them that's been very familiar to me from what I've seen from championship potential teams in the past. I think that this is the week they do it. I think even the Mahomes play is having just on the heels of that concussion. Is he able to really play at Patrick Mahomes type level at that point, or is he a little bit reduced? Puckology, bro, this guy should ask for a coaching job since he thinks he can do such a better job. Laughing my ass off. Oh, hey. Opinions are like a-holes. Everyone's got them, and they all stink. Seahawks H&L, if Wilson goes to the Niners, we're done. Probably third or fourth in the division for years. Potentially so, man. Potentially so. It takes a division that's already brutal, already tough. And one of the nice things with playing the Niners recently has been that we've been able to beat the hell out of Garoppolo, that he struggles against the Seahawks defense. Hard not to see them making them a cut above at that point. Especially, again, too, it's, what's the cost going to be to get Watson, a guy who's trying to force his way out of town? You're not going to have to pay top compensation as you normally would. RSOs, do you see Seattle using the franchise tag this offseason on Carson, KJ, or Shaquille Griffin? Nope. The cost would be exorbitant, Zos, on all of those, and it just won't be They don't have the cap space to do it. You have to have the cap space to create the room for those franchise tags, which cost a lot of money on that one-year deal, and they don't have that room. Dark RH, yep, Hawks Nest, and Pete won that one chip because of his talent, and so did Doc. They both haven't done anything in the playoffs in the last 5 seasons. So it's an apropos comparison. Dark, definitely apropos. Dustin says, make Adam Gase's press conference crazy eyes on a background or on Zoom. Barry, F no on Stafford, says Barry. Stafford doesn't have that it factor. Stafford doesn't win games like Russ. Well, it's actually is surprising, Barry. It is surprising on this part. When I was looking recently at where Russell was sitting as far as about 4 weeks ago, I was looking at where he was sitting on all-time comeback wins in that mark. I was really surprised to see Matt Stafford is actually pretty far ahead of him right now. Now, he's got a lot of years that he's played in the league ahead of Russ, but he's got a lot of comeback wins. And I know Stafford's got some problems, and you're right. There's a bit of, does he have the it factor? I don't know. But there is a part of me that always thought with with Matt and playing in Detroit and in that dysfunctional organization that was dysfunctional before he got there, far before he got there, that's caused multiple Hall of Fame players and greats who still had a lot of play left in him, Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, to retire prematurely. There's a part of me that wonders what he could do in a different place and if he would be a little bit of a different quarterback in given an opportunity with a little more talent around him, a little bit better coaching around him. Josh, Lugo, hiring Gase would be a legit fan-losing move. IMO, people would be so pissed. Oh, Joshua, it would be. You would get, especially from the smart Seahawks fan base side of things, you would have a lot of revolting. And I'm talking about the revolting of vomiting in their mouth, revolting. That's what I'm talking about. ALR, I'm not even going to try with Dustin anymore. He just says the opposite of whatever safer response is. Yeah, he's Dark Eyes. Look at his emoticon. He's got the Soviet flag in his emoticon, and when he's not rocking the Soviet flag, he's rocking Smeagol from Lord of the Rings, a literal troll. That's what he does, man. He's our troll mascot here, and Dustin knows it. He knows his role, man. You can't get caught into it. He's a perpetrator. He's gonna pick on you. He's gonna try to get you in on it. Zachary Schwegler. How you doing, Zachary? Sorry, I butchered your last name. Out of all of the possible options at offensive coordinator, which one would get you the most excited? I think as far as feasible offensive coordinators you could bring in, because I think that as much as I'd love to see Lincoln Riley, for instance, brought in, he's going to want to come for a head coaching job if he leaves the coaching ranks. If we're talking about feasible, the guy from Iowa, the other Campbell, not the one that was hired to Detroit, the guy from Iowa, to me, is another one of these young minds that's very smart in how he runs his offenses. Can run an offense with certain ability to also work in the run game with the pass game, not just be a kind of a one-trick pony as an offensive coordinator. I think he would be probably the most likely guy on my list of feasible guys that we could look at. If we're going to look at guys that are the guys of the list, that are the names that are being thrown out there, the guys that they've looked at, Anthony Lynn would seem to be the top of those. But he doesn't blow me away. It's not a move that I would be like, oh, this is it. This is what's going to take us up that next level. This is what's going to get us up into the mountaintop again. I wouldn't necessarily think that. Certainly an improvement, Lynn would be over Schottenheimer. He at least understands how to run a modern offense. But a significant improvement? I don't know about that. Damian says, Stafford's an insane quarterback, though. Look at the players around him and then his stats. Sure, he had Calvin Johnson for years, but even past that. Yeah, I think he's not necessarily had a phenomenal football team around him. And look, he might be what he is. He might be a guy that's just one of those, when people were calling him a few years ago, Stat Padford, because he would pad his stats on games where they were behind. But as I mentioned, he's ahead of Russell Wilson on the all-time fourth quarter comebacks. So there is a little bit more to his game than just that. A guy that, he had the Calvin Johnson, as you point out, Dan, but not a lot other than that. Not a real bell cow back through his years. Not some fantastic offensive lineman blocking for him. It's always been kind of a constant motoring and turning through in that respect. It'll be interesting to see if he gets another chance in a different place this offseason, because I think Stafford is moving to somewhere this offseason. I don't think he's staying in Detroit. Oh, thank you for mentioning that, Dustin. Please do, if you are watching this right now, smash on that like button. Helps the channel grow out immensely, helps me show up on the search results, so it doesn't cost you anything. Just hit that like button. Please, 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 please. The Rocket, I think a wise move is to look at the Calvary Stampeders or some team like that. Your Seahawks need runners. Maybe so. Cameron Hughes, KJ isn't getting more than 5. I'd be surprised if he did too, Cameron. It was this comments that he released out here recently where he said he expects to be paid like this top end guy. I'm like, paid like you're paid freaking $8 million or something last year, right? $7-8 million. What do you're an outside linebacker in a 4-3. You're a will in a 4-3. What do you think your value really is here, man? Law Rep 2 says, how do you feel about our defensive line? I'm actually really fairly enthusiastic about our defensive line, Law Rep. I think the nice thing is that you've got a mix now, a little bit of old and young. I would expect them to go out there and get a legitimate pass rusher on the market. And when I look at right now, when you look at the pass rushers that are available, going back to my list here, sorry, folks. So when I look at the list of available defensive linemen that are going to be out there, I would expect Leonard Williams is either going to sign a contract extension with the Giants or they'll franchise him. But you got Clowney, you got Justin Houston, Yannick Ngakoue, Ryan Kerrigan, Ndamukong Suh, Everson Griffin, Autry from the Colts, Romeo Akawara from the Detroit Lions, Sheldon Rankins, Hyder from the 49ers, Carl Lawson from the Cincinnati Bengals, Corey Peters. I also expect there to be a couple guys like potentially Fletcher Cox, Brandon Williams, Akeem Hicks, Sheldon Richardson. There's going to be a variety of guys probably also cut because of the $180 million salary cap that's going to go down to. So there's going to be a lot of free. I think they're going to target one of these guys to bring in. Now you're talking about pairing Carlos Dunlap with, let's say, Yannick Ngakoue. And then I've got the 4 young guys behind. I got Rasheem Green, Darrell Taylor, LJ Collier, and Alton Robinson. The stream just froze. And Alton Robinson. So I've got between those 4 guys, just 1 or 2 of those guys pops for me, and I got my front end guys. Now I got a little bit of a rotation on the edges, don't I? Now I can keep guys fresh and still keep the top end talent going. Now I'm getting back to reduplicating kind of what we had back in 2013 when we already had Chris Clemens, we already had Bruce Irvin, and then we went into free agency and got Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill in addition. You stacked it up. And that's what I like. That's what I would like to see them do. But I do feel good about where we are, even on the defensive tackle, where you've got Brian Monet, Jaron Reed, and Poona Ford coming back in. That's a solid threesome to kind of build off of on the interior there. Maybe you bring one more body in on that with a little bit of talent. But I think that they're starting to round that crew out into shape. And Carlos Dunlap really is the guy I think who has helped to kind of cement all the rest around. You're less reliant on one of those young guys to pop now. You're just playing the odds. One of them's going to pop. One will come out. One will come out. Imagine you get an Alton Robinson now who's a perennial 8 to 10 sack a year guy, and you got a Dunlap, and you got a Yannick Ngakoue. You can kind of start to maybe turn that crew or that unit into a lethal unit. Dark Right says, I can't with Packer fans trying to say Jair Alexander the 8th is better than Jalen Ramsey. Jair locked down wide receivers 2s and nobodies. Ramsey's locked up DK and Hop all the times they face, plus Diggs and others. Solid point. I mean, the NFC East is, or NFC North, I'm sorry. You look at the competition, you got, okay, Lions, Golladay, Marvin Jones. Certainly the Bears got their one guy there, but, I mean, that's all they got is the one guy, Allen Robinson. The division isn't exactly stacked with wide receivers. I would have Jalen as my top guy this year. I think Jair is a really good player, though, too, and he's right there with him. The Rocket says, instead of Stafford, why not Gardner Minshew? The Rocket, the only issue with this, and I don't really want to go with Stafford as a trade either, because I'm more enamored by the thought process of getting a young, talented quarterback, a first-round quarterback with 5 years of cheap club control. I want to take advantage of those 5 years of cheap club control and the fact that quarterbacks now, when they come out of college, are more ready to play. We're seeing more of these guys hitting the ground running, being ready to go, taking less time for the development side of it. So when you're talking about going for Stafford or going for a guy like even Gardner Minshew, you're removing some of the element that I want to take advantage of. Minshew's about to go into the 3rd year of his rookie deal. He's also a guy who's not a first-round quarterback, so you don't have the 2 years extra of club control. Essentially, he comes in here and balls out next year. You're going to be right back to having to pay him next year, as well as you lose draft compensation in the trade of Russ to the Jaguars at that point because you're taking Minshew back in compensation. So for these reasons, I just wouldn't be in favor of Minshew in that respect. Arzo says Carson unfollowed Seattle and Russ on Instagram already. He's way gone. Yeah, I think he is too. So I put the 1% chance, and that might even be a little bit high. Metcalf fan 14. I heard someone about JJ Watt coming to Seattle. Have you heard about it? I haven't heard any necessarily certain rumors on that, Metcalf, and it would be interesting to see if that's the case, because there's two teams out there that I think that he would be maybe potentially enamored in going to. Pittsburgh Steelers, both of his brothers play on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Does he want to maybe go play with his brothers? I mean, I would think that would be, if my brother was playing the NFL, I'd want to go play with him. And then on the other side of it, you've got the Packers, who went to school in Wisconsin. I would think that if he wanted to come there on a lower end deal for them, and they'd welcome him there with wide open arms. Dark Rage says, I feel like J.J. Watt's overrated now. He's a big name, but he only got 6 sacks. You should pick up someone like Leonard Floyd or anyone young. The thing I like with J.J. Watt, Dark Rage, is he can play all defensive line positions. Of course, Leonard Floyd's only really going to play on the outside, and Leonard Floyd's really an outside 3-4 linebacker. He's not really a guy who's going to put his hand in the dirt. I don't think J.J. Watt's necessarily overrated. He's just not the player he once was. The thing, you got to look at that defensive line with the Texans. They weren't that good. He was the only guy you had to go out there and double, and he got doubled quite a bit this year. It shows with these pass rushers, when they get doubled up a high prevalence amount of the time, they're not able to be as productive. And I think that built into more of that, in my opinion, on him, Dark RH. I still think he's a very good player, and you're not bringing him to be some cornerstone defensive player here at that point. You're adding him to be part of the pass rush, the part of the defensive line rotation, which, like I said, if you got him on one side and Dunlap on the other, and Jaron Reed and Monet and Poona Ford on the rotation there, and your backup young guys ready to come in there, and they're hungry, and they're getting their 20 snaps a game, and they're coming out with their hair on fire, that could be a pretty lethal unit, in my opinion. That could be. I'd feel damn good about that unit. I'm getting some coffee. 1 second. Here we go. Cameron Hughes says, I wanted Trufant last year, but then after what he got from the Lions, I was laughing out loud. Yeah, the Lions grossly overpaid on that one. And True's a good cornerback, but they paid him huge money there. Huge money. Dustin Nelrod says, Hawks Nest, would you take Russ over Josh Allen, Lamar, Watson, Herbert? Age is accounted for. So I get to account for age, Dustin, if that's the caveat, where I get to account for the fact I'm getting a younger player. I would take Josh Allen, I think, right now over Russ. No, I would not take Lamar Jackson over Russ, because I think Lamar Jackson's going to have a cap to how effective he's going to be as a quarterback. I think he's kind of burning both ends of the wick. Watson, I think I lean to a yes with Watson because of the fact that he is so much better at this point, it would appear to me, in some of the stats that I was referencing earlier, in his ability in being the highest rated quarterback in throws under 2.5 seconds. He's able to play more on time while still being a scrambling quarterback. That interests me, and there's some parts of this where I wonder with Russ if he's a guy who can play on time. Can he play within the context of a court? First read's there, go to the second, ball out of your hand. Look at pre-snap where things need to go, assess it, determine it, go to it. I mentioned he's the fifth amount of most of time that he spent in the pocket holding on the ball this year. Russ did. He's essentially the James Harden at times of quarterbacks, just pounding the life out of the ball, and a lot of times to his detriment. Herbert, yes, I would, Dustin. I think Herbert's freakish, really freakish. I think that he slipped between the cracks, but he's going to be a great quarterback as long as he can stay healthy. The Rocket, if Chad Henne wins the Super Bowl, start looking at him? No. Arzos, who are you going for, Packers or Bucks? I hate the Packers so much, so I'm going for the Bucks. But I don't like the Bucks. But I don't like the Bucks either. Hard to like either of those two teams as those, I agree. I'm going to probably go for the Packers. I can't take any more Tom Brady in Super Bowls. I've had my fill of Tom Brady in Super Bowls, so anything else but that. Thank you, Brian Roberts, for mentioning it, for everyone to like and smash that like button. I appreciate you. Randall says, how much of the play call issues were shoddy and how much was shoddy trying to call plays within guidelines PC set? Pete Carroll said. It's not all one thing or the other. Looked good 7 weeks and then PC tinkered. Yeah, there's a part here. The thing with that answer on that, Randall, is we don't know for sure. We don't really know how much control Carroll exerts over the offense. We know he does. We know he doesn't just butt out and stay out of the offense. There's some degree here that he's implementing himself into the offense. And I've seen this before. We've seen mic'd up sideline footage of Carroll talking when the offense is on the field about, hey, maybe you want to go run the ball here. Maybe you want to go do it. So I've also seen him say it too. And having a voice on that and trying to determine what the offensive coordinator is going to call. I would like not to think that it's sort of like once every 3 plays he's coming in, but a once in a while type deal. But I think the thing you're pointing to and the thing that certainly Carroll had his hand in is midseason. He said, we're going to dial back the deep throws. We're going to go to the short passing game. We're going to try to go back to running the football. And I think that he definitely curtailed some of what Shoddy was doing early on this season because of that. Also, of course, teams were adjusting into the cover 2. I mean, this has been one of the famous things being brought up throughout the Seahawks fandom is that they couldn't adjust to the cover 2 throughout the year, which kind of makes sense if you really break it down logically. Schottenheimer's running a 1987's offense. Well, what beat those run-heavy offenses that kept trying to take deep shots through the 80s and the early 90s? The implementation of the cover 2. Now suddenly we're going to take away your deep shot on both sides of the field. We're going to make you and ask you to be patient. And that was Seattle just didn't have that ability at that point to then be patient. And some of that could be just it's not built within the structural X's and O's of Schottenheimer's playbook. You could make that argument. Dark Rage says, I have the Bucks and Chiefs winning regardless if Mahomes plays or not. I really don't want to have to watch TB12 in the Super Bowl again, but it's looking likely. I don't know, Dark Rage. He's got to go into that. He's got to go into Lambeau, man. You got to go into Lambeau. It's easier said than done going in there and winning the playoffs. Metcalf fan 14 says Russ for Money Mitch and a 4th round pick. Oh, brutal. Dustin, I agree. We do need the throwbacks. George Brady. If Russ is as trash now as many Hawks fans say, we won't get anything for him, and his contract is too expensive. Joe, I don't know that George fans are saying he's necessarily trash. I think more of what fans are trying to say here, George, is that Carroll's deciding to dial back this offense, and he's not going to take advantage of Russ in the way that maybe Russ potentially has an ability to show out in that fashion. I think it's fans, and what I've tried to maintain on this, George, is that first and foremost, I want to keep Russ with a dynamic mastermind offensive coordinator. Carroll has indicated it would seem that he's going to go for more of a run-heavy centric offensive coordinator, which means the days of letting Russ cook are dead. If that's the case, George, and you're going to pay a quarterback $35 million a year, it's not that he's trash. It's not that other teams in the league wouldn't look at him and say, hey, that team's misusing that quarterback. We could use him much better. And that's what I would be taking advantage of, George, is there's a lot of smart organizations out there that say that this guy's played at an MVP level in a simplistic offense not built around him. What if we embrace that with him and see what he can do? I guarantee you there's a few teams out there that would be fully in favor and on board with doing it. And his cost wouldn't be that exorbitant, George, because we are on the hook for all of the bonus money that accelerates if you trade him. This is why it's a negative $7 million cap hit if you trade him this offseason. So those teams are then only on the hook for his base salary, at least for the next 2 years. Washi, let's sign Joe Thuney and Brandon Scherf and then move Damian Lewis to center and trade Lockett and sign Allen Robinson. How does that sound? Let's see. I'd like it. Washi, I don't have any problems with it. I don't have problems with it. You're going with some sure bets there on the offensive line. I sure would like to just leave Lewis, I think, at right guard, to be honest with you, though. I don't want to move him into center. There's a lot of good centers in this free agent class that are due to come up. So right now we've got Alex Mack, Atlanta Falcons center. He's getting a little older, still pretty good. Pouncey is going to be on the free agent market. Corey Linsley, one of the best centers in all the sport, might get re-signed by the Packers. They don't have a lot of money, though. They're actually due to be a little bit over the cap. You got Andrews from New England, Karras from Miami. There's a couple of centers out there. I mean, they might look at Justin Britt, feel like he's a little more healthy now, a year off of ACL. I think you can look at other places in order to maybe address the center position. But I love where you're coming from, Ashi. Allen Robinson would be certainly an upgrade over Tyler Lockett if you flipped him out. John Lima, some late, can you fill me in on what's up? Bottom line, John, just as in reference to the Russell and Pete thing. Pete comes out in the press conference, says we're going to dial back to more of a run-heavy centric approach. Russell has a press conference 2 days later where he comes out and says we need to be more explosive offensively. We need to score more points. We need to run up tempo stuff. We need to essentially let me cook. So you have the coach and the player saying two different things here. And it would indicate that there is a little bit of a rift. And the key on this, John, is the aspect of Russell doing this publicly, having this Zoom press conference where it's a couple days coming on the heels of Carroll saying what he said, almost as if he's responding in kind to what Carroll was doing. So this is playing out a little bit publicly for us all to watch and see in live action. It'll be interesting to see how it goes, but that's the way I'm kind of seeing it right now. The Rocket, I feel like we screwed up letting Percy Harvin go, but he did some shady stuff. Yeah, I just think he's a bit of a head case, Rocket. You know, when you're going into the Super Bowl week and you end up dropping a guy on his head and you know, your fellow receiver on your team and just he seemed to have his share of attitude stuff that went through. And it makes sense. He came from that Florida program, same program that Aaron Hernandez came out of, where there was a lot of that just, you know, placating to their behavior type stuff and letting those guys just run wild down there. Then they got to the pros and they couldn't function within any sort of real discipline. And I think that showed up, as well as at the end of the day, his hip was dodgy. Just because when he got that surgery, that didn't fix it. He ended up having, I think, to retire because of that hip. So I like Percy, like the potential of what it could be. Love the trade when it happened at the time, but and didn't like at the moment the timing of when they released him and how they released him. But with that said, it's understandable in retrospect. Joshua Lugo, I'd be down honestly if we traded Russ for Trevor Lawrence and like another first and the third we gave. I'd be on board with it too, Joshua. I've also am on record as saying I think that Trevor Lawrence is one of that rare categories of quarterbacks. If you go from basically 1983 on, there's been to me three guys that are those bulletproof, absolutely awesome quarterback prospects. You can't really pick them apart. John Elway, Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence. Those are the three guys to me that all fit into that same level. So I would absolutely be willing to trade for him. I just don't think that they're going to be willing to do that. I think Urban Meyer's going down there to Jacksonville. I think they're absolutely on board with bringing in Lawrence. They've got a whole big plan in place, and why wouldn't they? Dark RH says, I find it very strange that whenever Dustin stops talking, some random person with a generic name starts talking about how Seahawks fans are ungrateful and how Russ and Pete are the next coming of Jesus. You're onto his game, Dark RH. You're onto his game. Random McDaniel says Russ was really close with Shoddy. I don't think that Russell Wilson necessarily thinks he's the issue. I'm sure he understands his limitations. I think you're onto something with Russell Wilson versus Pete Carroll. Yeah, I think there's been somebody asked him a question on it, Randall, about Schottenheimer going. And it was it seemed a little bit of like, wasn't the problem. I forget the exact wording of how it was put, but yeah, I think that's a little bit of why it's telling Randall when you see him do a press conference. And we started to see more of Russell kind of piping up over the last year and a half, say, I'd like to have a Patrick Mahomes offense. Sure, it'd be nice to go out and score some more points. He was never really like that earlier on in his career, and he's starting to press on that now. And we're getting a little bit used to it, but it's still telling when he comes out and has that press conference like he has, because he's trying to send a message. He's playing the public relations war here that's kind of going on between the two sides. Because what Russell Wilson wants to land on and what he wants to get to is have a pass-heavy offense, be allowed to cook, be allowed to flourish and get maybe some MVP votes at some point along the way. He's not going to do that on a run-first, run-centric team. He will always be the guy that's considered a game manager at that point. The Rocket says Russell Wilson, Italo Disco. Can't pronounce that. Tech3677. Has anybody Google Sarjay and Trevor Lawrence? Yeah, both are hideous looking, but they look alike. Same father, maybe. Brian Barajas. The LOB carried Pete, and he knows it. And now he's exposed for not being as great as we thought. Could be Brian. I think the thing that we got to also take into account here with Pete, though, is that he did have a lot of success in college football. He won national titles. Now, did he do it by being a great recruiter, which you can't implement as well on the pro level, that isn't as good a skill to necessarily... It doesn't seem like they've been able to utilize the recruiting aspect as much as we all would like to think I think Coach Carroll could. But certainly, yeah, you certainly can make that argument at this point, Brian, as you've not been able to get anywhere near the former past successes. You had like 2 real magical drafts where you just were hitting everything out of the park on every single swing, and then you fell off the map. I mean, your drafts really from 2014 on into 2019 even, I would say, for almost a 5-year stretch, a lot of missing. A lot of you assembling and accumulating draft picks only to just get guys that aren't really giving you anything out on the football field. A lot of misses. A lot of misses in that respect. Cameron says, yeah, Russ is pissed at Pete for firing Shoddy. He's probably giving him the silent treatment. Could be. I'd like to hope that they're talking. I would. Randall says we need a scandal that got the same that got Pete out of the UFC. Sounds good, as long as we don't lose any draft picks for it. Dustin Elron says, Hawks Nest, will Urban Meyer succeed with the Jaguars? He will, because he's waited for the right place to pop up. And in Jags, it's the perfect time for this to pop in for him. They don't have a lot of dead money, bad contracts. They've got a couple of good up-and-coming young players. They've got a lot of draft capital that they've been able to reap over the last couple of years with some of their trades, including Yannick Ngakoue and Jalen Ramsey. And then you look at the key on this, which is that you got Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he's got just everything he needs to do to set this up in the right way and to be successful. So he's choosing the right spot to do it. I think the Sean Khan guy is actually probably a fairly good owner there. I would expect them to have success with that. The Rocket says, just don't sign Antonio Brown. I'd expect him to be a target. Maybe that'll be the make Russ happy move they make. Here, Russ, here's Brown. You can finally have him. Now shut up. B-Russ, I really like the idea of bringing Fournette in. After watching him single-handedly finish that game against the Saints and power through guys, I like his potential. Guy's got a ceiling of potential, B-Russ. I mean, he absolutely does. He's a faster guy than Marshawn, bigger guy than Marshawn. Certainly doesn't maybe run with the same ferocity, but not that far off. And again, as I said before, where I come to it, he just hasn't been put in the right situation to flourish, in my opinion, yet. He's been put in just some stuff that's just not exactly the quite right place that he could put. And if he's got a threat at quarterback, if he's got a good rest of the team around him, I think he could do really well for us, especially because that's the mold we like. Have a good night, Jose Rodriguez. I'll catch you later, man. Keep up the good stuff with your vids. Our Darker H, don't think the Packers are letting Aaron Jones go, although that would be good for the Hawks. It would be good for the Hawks. I do think they're going to let him go, Dark RH. I think that's part of why they drafted the kid out of Boston College last year, A.J. Dillon. So I think that they're probably looking to move off from him. I think Packers are a pretty smart organization. Who was the last running back that the Packers paid? Amon Green? You know, they don't tend to pay running backs there. Cameron Hughes, there are rumors Green Bay could sign Jamal Williams rather than Jones to save cap and because they drafted Dillon in the second. Wow. It's like I'm psychic on your comments there. It's exactly what I was saying with that, Cameron. Yeah, he's going to cost money, Aaron Jones is. They're not going to want to pay the money on that. I think they're a little bit over the cap right now as we stand, the Packers are. I think they're going to they looked ahead to this move, and we're anticipating making it very soon. William Harding. How you doing, William? He says, Hawks Nest, we should sign an offensive coordinator that will make the offense more balanced between run and pass. I'm okay with a balanced offensive coordinator, William. I just want a guy that's got an ability to think outside the box, and he can give some easy wins for Russell Wilson out there, right? And by easy wins, I mean you scheme stuff up through a particular motion off of a formation. Whatever it may be as an individual wrinkle, you're doing something to then allow pre-snap, post-snap, Russell to have an easy read and an easy completion. Good coordinators are able to do that for their quarterbacks. And our previous coordinators recently, being both Bevel and both Schottenheimer, didn't do enough of that. So I'm okay with the balance, but I need you from the passing game to be a little bit more varied, a little more intricate, a little more detailed centric on what you're doing. And I think if they went that route, then they could completely still be balanced. Barry says, Antonio Brown should be hired for OC purely for his song, Runnin', Runnin', Runnin'. I haven't heard that song. Ivan, we are a horrible team. We're not completely horrible, Ivan, but we've got some work to do this offseason. Randall says, how much input will Russ have on an offensive coordinator hire? Is that standard in the NFL, especially top-tier guys, actually in the interview, or they just ask what they think about certain guys? He had input on Schottenheimer. I don't think he had any input on Schottenheimer's hire at the time, no. And I would say, Randall, that, I'm trying to think through the history of quarterbacks. It's Brady definitely probably had a say in having McDaniels coming back into play after McDaniels was fired from the Broncos after he initially left the Patriots. I'd expect something like that. Probably is really just dependent on each individual given situation, and each individual given situation is different. It doesn't tend to be one that you would do that with. However, you also wouldn't tend to have a quarterback in the middle of his prime, 10 years into his career. That's a unique situation, and one that I usually would probably think lend itself to allowing that quarterback to at least feel like he has a voice. You don't necessarily have to give him the voice, just make him feel like he's having some input on the process. Dark RH, Russ should go to the Dolphins. Big market, top 5 defense. They have draft capital so they can pick up wide receivers and offensive linemen. No income tax, and he cares about money. Good point, Dark RH. I think Miami would be one of those organizations that would be targeted. They would be one of those organizations that he would be looking at. And it hits that big market, which is the most important part of this. Any team that he goes to, it's got to be a big market team, and the Dolphins would certainly be that. Am I talking about politics? I didn't know I was talking about politics. The Rocket, if we replace our coordinators with umbrella cockatoos, we probably still would beat the Jets. Probably. William Harden, make the offense more balanced. Yeah, I mean, look, William, your offense was balanced through the whole back half of the schedule, and it wasn't very good. Being balanced itself is not a recipe. I'm okay with doing it, but it's more based upon you're turning your passing game into something a little more complex than what it's been, which is the passing attack looks a lot like the passing attacks in 1987 and some of the route combinations you're running. Run some more varied stuff. Be less harder to predict in that respect, and then you can be more balanced. But that will be a key with that for me. Dark Rage, Todd Gurley is still my favorite all-time. He's washed now, but he was a stud for those 2 years. He still would have been a top 3 running back if he didn't get arthritis. Yeah, sometimes that ACL tears and there's no more cartilage left after a few years into the league. It's odd like that, but it does happen sometimes. Anthony Linda, Seattle, says Ivan. I think that's the likely way this is going to go. Bird of Prey, Dustin's our troll here, man. Don't let him buy you into some fights. Dark Rage says, Kamara kind of reminds me of Gurley. Not me, man. I think they're completely different running backs. Gurley's the slide guy. Gurley's slide and glide. Kamara's a little bit more short area burst and quickness. A little bit better off of contact, a little bit better of keeping his feet off contact. Gurley's got a little bit more of the deep speed. The ability to break the big play. Brian Roberts, earlier I seen Marshawn Lynch on the ice trying to play hockey. It was crazy. I saw that too. Nice to see beast mode on the hockey rink. William Harding, do I think the Rams defense will be number 1 next season or not? No, I don't. I think they're going to lose Leonard Floyd, and I don't think they have the money to spend on him this offseason. And I think eventually we're getting closer and closer to the point where Aaron Donald's not going to be the complete game wrecker he's been every single game of the season that we've played him. So I think there'll be some factors that allow them to fall back to earth. They're going to lose Andre Whitworth. They're very important, very key left tackle is going to probably retire this offseason. I think it's going to keep things off. Henry Soto, thank you very much. You have a great night. I appreciate you, and thank you so much. HawksNest asked Dustin, can Russ get restraining order against Aaron Donald? I think he's going to have to at this point. Though maybe Aaron Donald gets the restraining order against him, Dustin. Of course, Russell was the one who broke Aaron Donald's rib on that sack. So, or on that play where he hit him and he came down on his deal. Russell's hurt a few defensive players. Don't forget, Russell's the guy that's the reason J.J. Watt's got that deal on his nose. J.J. Watt was tackling Russ in his second year, and Russ broke his nose when he was trying to tackle him. Russ definitely hurts defenders when they try to tackle him sometimes. Cameron Hughes, Brandon, you got to link that Lockett Mario Kart meme because I cannot find this thing anywhere. Check on Twitter, Cameron. It should still be on Twitter somewhere. And it was against, I think, the San Diego Chargers. It was the San Diego Chargers returning the preseason. Henry, yeah, that was so nasty. Yeah, I love him. He's disgusting. Like, his speed just kills. Which guy are you talking about? Ryan Sylvester. How you doing, Ryan? What city are you guys from in Washington? I was all over the west side in my youth. I went to high school in Mukilteo, Ryan. So Mukilteo is just right next to Everett, Washington, of course. But I lived all over on the west side. Law Rep 2, Alex Collins in the mix next year? No. Probably not. No. He was a fill-in for the injury situation this year. I just think, I know he had a good couple runs in that Niner game, but nah, probably not. Dark RH says, Steeler fans are tough on Big Ben. 47, coming off elbow surgery. 47. Coming off elbow surgery, worst run game in the NFL, leading the league in passing attempts, and they still try to blame him. He's a scapegoat. Yeah, I think, for them, it's again, fans sometimes glom onto the weird things, Dark RH, and certainly, look, Ben had a lot of bad games he stacked over last season, and for the reasons, a lot of what you said, I think he has lost a little bit. I don't think he's aged as well as some of these other quarterbacks out in the sport, but the Steelers' big problem last year, in my opinion, was when they lost their two linebackers. You lost Bud Dupree, who did a lot of the dirty work for them as a pass rusher on the outside to let Watt flourish, and then you lost Bush, your very key inside linebacker, who was a top 5 pick a year ago. I think that sunk the defense and where that defense was playing at, which was pretty darn dominant at that time. And then now it's fallen onto Ben's shoulders with him being the problem with it. But again, I think there were some issues this year with Ben, Dark RH. He was one of the lowest rated quarterbacks, had a lot of low rated quarterback games and just didn't play well for him. It's what we talk about sometimes, where if you're a great quarterback, if you're paid at the top of the sport, you need to be able to elevate the team around you, not expect the team around you to elevate you. Well, welcome from Federal Way there, Ryan. Appreciate you hopping in. Terrence Brown, a lot of former coaches and members of media think Seattle is wasting Wilson's prime years because of a lack of coaching. Do you agree? Yeah, I do agree. Terrence. Let me take you back to a comparison that I've often made. Bill Belichick, when he became the head coach of the New England Patriots, was very much a Pete Carroll type head coach. He came from the Bill Parcells tree of, we're going to run the ball, we're going to run it consistently, and we're going to win doing so. And that was something that helped the Bills, for instance, or helped the Giants, for instance, beat the high-powered Bills offense in that Super Bowl, was that team, being the Giants, was able to run their guy he ran 42 times in that game. So Parcells comes from that background, goes to the Patriots, and runs his offenses thusly, seeks his offenses to be run thusly. Very conservative. Get your Corey Dillon in there. Win a couple Super Bowls with Toms, with those kind of guys going, right? Then he starts to realize and understand, wait a second here. I have a Hall of Fame quarterback. I have the check. Okay, I got it back. I got it quick there, guys. Okay, so what I was saying there was that Bill Belichick made a transition, and I lost who asked that comment on it, so if I lost your name on that, I'm sorry. He made this transition midway through his career, Bill Belichick did with the Patriots, where he realized he had the next incarnation of Joe Montana on his team. And so he said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start being pass heavy. I'm going to embrace the new passing concepts of the sport that are out there. And where are they being had at? On the college level. I'm going to go to Chip Kelly at Oregon. I'm going to learn about this spread formation offense, about the short passing game. And I'm going to adopt it. I'm going to allow Tom to really open this thing up. And he embraced it. He even brought in Randy Moss. He changed as a coach. He evolved as a coach. Where is Carroll's evolution, Terrence? Where is that evolution here with Russell and realizing I've got a Hall of Fame quarterback, middle of his prime. Let me take advantage of that. What have been the indications of that other than them paying him top market? You've not built an offense around him. You've not brought in a bright young offensive coordinator. And this is where people go to, Terrence, saying you're wasting his prime. You're wasting his great years. You could be getting so much more out of this player than what you're getting because you're so staunchy in your old school approach to things. And I do agree. The Rocket says, do you believe that sooner or later Seattle may return to the AFC if a certain team moves into another division happened? We came close to that when the Chargers moved to LA. I would not think that Seattle would sign off on being bopped back around and forth and understand that hurts it hurts your draw to be doing that like that. Cameron Hughes says, did you hear Colin Cowherd's latest take? He said the NFL should postpone the AFC Championship game so Mahomes could play. That's dumb. That's absolutely dumb. And yeah, that is a crap take. Absolutely crap take. No. No. Why did the Kansas City? No. That's so stupid. It's so dumb, Cameron. That's one of his dumbest takes, and that's saying something. Remember the time 92. I would like for Russ to call the plays. He did mention that he wanted to do some more up-tempo offense. I would too remember the time. That's what he's done it well in the past. And it seems like Carroll restricts it a little bit. Why? Because when you run up tempo, you're not going to shorten the game as much, which is what Carroll looks to have done with his offenses. Run the ball, shorten the game, minimize the possessions, minimize the potential of mistakes being made. So when you run up tempo, you increase the number of plays in the game. You increase the potential for a mistake to be made. This goes against what Carroll wants. I'd love to see it. You'd love to see it. I don't know if we're going to really see it as much as we'd like. Cameron Hughes says Sean Alexander should have been in the Hall of Fame a while ago. It's a damn shame Holmgren isn't in the Hall of Fame yet. More qualified than Jimmy Johnson and Bill Cowher. Mike just wasn't on TV. Hard with Jimmy because he won a couple of, three titles. That's hard there. Cowher was a guy just loved through the league. But I agree. Mike's going to get there at some point, Cameron. Hard not to see how he isn't in there. Harder for Sean, in my opinion, Cameron. And me and Dustin have gone round and round on this multiple times. Where Dustin, he had a great career. But again, you do have to factor in with Sean the help that he had around him. Having 2 Hall of Fame offensive linemen blocking for you does have to be factored in. Having Pro Bowlers like Max Strong through the majority of your career blocking for you when fullbacks were still very much a part of the football game, you got to factor that in. And then you got to look at the other running backs around Sean at that time. There are a lot of running backs cracking above him yardage-wise who also didn't get in either. So I think it's all got to kind of come into play. Jamel Johnson, how you doing, Jamel? Why has everyone let Freddie Swain off the hook? That whiff on the screen cost us the game. I'm not one of those people, Jamel. I consider the play to have there's a lot of blame to dole out in that moment on that given play. And certainly Swain could have fixed a lot more things if he went a little bit harder on that play and actually tried for the block and didn't block like a wide receiver, but actually tried to get the man out of the way. DK also didn't help though there, Jamel, where DK on that play has got to come back to the quarterback. He's got to not just stand in place and wait for the ball to arrive, but go attack the ball and then get upfield. He earned some of that. Russell earned some of that for not changing his cadence up a little bit and allowing the rolling start by the cornerback to get at DK. But then it's Schottenheimer at the end of the day, Jamel. Schottenheimer at the end of the day, you're running trips to the short side of the field and then a bubble screen off of that. Most offensive coordinators wouldn't do that. They would run it to the wide side of the field. Dark Right says Aaron Donald is better than Lawrence Taylor. Sorry, I had to say it. Also, I'll be right back in 10 to 20 minutes. I'm trying to rebuild the New York Jets. Sounds good, Dark Right, and I might be prone to agree with you, actually. Ryan Sylvester, Russell has to retire as a Seahawk. I'd love to see that too, Ryan. I hope it goes that way. Sadly, we're just getting some indicators here that more and more the little blips on the radar are just kind of showing themselves that maybe that's not going to be the case. Rodney, honestly, Hawks Nest, I seriously do not think Russ can read a defense. I've got questions on this as well. I think this year he took a huge step back in his pre-snap recognition, both in recognizing when the blitz is coming, where it's coming from, but also on the other side of this is making his pre-snap reads to who he's going to go to as, let's say, a hot route on a blitz and not choosing the correct receiver on that pre-snap stuff. Those are things that are indicators to, his acumen, pre-snap and reading a defense. And it's, I think, a very vital question. I saw a lot of times this year where Russell would look at his first read, leave his first read, and then try to scramble around in the pocket. That's for a guy that's 10 years in the sport, I'm expecting you more often to go through your second, third, and fourth read, to watch your head turn like this. That's how you can see it. You can see it quite honestly on the telecast when they're doing it. You watch the quarterback drop back, you watch his head, it turns one way, turns this way, turns that way. They ain't just looking with their eyes. They've got to look to the thing. You can count the reads they're going by how their head turns. And watch with Russ when he drops back. You'll watch him turn his head once, and then he's bailing. You see it just far too often. I don't know that he's completely bad pre-snap. Some of it was a regression thing that we saw last year. Some of it was him getting caught in that funk. He has been better at times, and he had been improving over the years up until this recent drop that he had this year. So I'm not completely on board with saying, he just has no ability to do it, but I understand why you said it, and I certainly are seeing some of the same things. Cameron Hughes says, can't remember if I've asked this already. Do you think Paul Allen would have fired Carroll? I don't know if he would have fired him, Cameron, but I don't think he would have given him a 5-year extension. Hard to say if he would have fired him. Hard to say that. But I don't think he's given him a 5-year extension with what he was seeing out there. Seahawks fan base, how you doing? Welcome on to the chat. Puente SKL2, but I thought Russell has a no-trade clause in his contract, says Puente, and this is very true. built within my prognostication of a potential Russell Wilson trade is that Russell himself would want to leave. So Puente, let's think about this through as a logic. Again, it's all just a logical experiment we're running through here, right? Coach Carroll comes out and says, I want to run centric. We'll go back to being run centric. We're going to go back to being effective at running the football. We got away from that last year. We got to get back into that. Russell hears that, and 2 days later comes out in a press conference and says, I want to score 24 points and a half. I want to run up tempo. I want to be let me cook again. Okay, now we go fast forward, let's say a week and a half from now when they sign their new offensive coordinator. That offensive coordinator is a run-centric guy who is going to be putting Russell into a 27 pass attempt type approach. 53% running, 47% passing as they did years prior to this last up-and-coming season. How does Russell take that, Puente? Does he say, I got a no-trade clause? Or does he say, you know what, guys, I might be willing to waive that no-trade clause if you send me to a team that'll actually, I don't know, build an offense around me and my skill set? I think it's a feasible possibility. Maybe not likely yet, but a feasible possibility. Good night, Brian. Appreciate you, bro. I'm a mod in charge. Jamel Johnson says this trade talk is just crazy. Very disappointing. It's disappointing, Jamel, but don't get caught too much in your feelings on this one. Just think it through. And again, in understanding what those folks who are saying about Russell Wilson being traded and what they're really saying. Because many of them, like myself, aren't saying Russell Wilson isn't a top quarterback. Russell Wilson isn't one of the best quarterbacks in the sport. Many of those same folks will still say that. Will say he is that. But the problem is you have a head coach who is unwilling, Jamel, to build the offense around him, to allow him to cook, to allow him to do what a Patrick Mahomes out there does, or other quarterbacks who've been in a similar situation in the past do. And we're all dealing with that reality and saying, okay, if that's the reality of it, then we've got to go do this instead because it doesn't make sense to pay this type of quarterback this money if you're not going to utilize him, right? You're going to make him the top paid quarterback in the sport. You better get your money's worth. And you're not getting your money's worth if you're asking Russell Wilson to throw the ball 27 times a game. Jamel Johnson says, get rid of Russ and hello, 4-12. I thought our fan base was smarter than this. So, Jamel, do you apply all of the success that we've had as an organization over the last 10 years specifically just to Russ? And that Coach Carroll's just been riding Russell's coattails through the whole time period? And again, too, many people that are on board, as far as in my chat, that have brought up the potential of trading Russell, Jamel, have been on board with saying, look, there's a potential here where we might not be a sub-playoff team like we had. But I'm worth taking that risk for the potential of being a Super Bowl contender, which we have not been for the last 5 years, Jamel. We've not been a Super Bowl contender going on 5 years. So people are willing to make the trade for that risk because that risk does exist. That probability raises a lot higher maybe to move on from Russell. But people are willing to pay that price of admission for the potential of a championship. And so am I. Easy, E53, if we lose in the wild card, Pete needs to go. Yeah, unfortunately, he wouldn't go. Just signed a 5-year extension. A lot of people would like to see him gone, first and foremost. And Jamel, at the end of the day, as this started out as a logical experiment, I said, first and foremost, I'd like to see Pete gone, an offensive guy like Lincoln Riley brought to the pro ranks as the head coach, and let's let Russ cook. I think that's many of our first favor that we'd like to go. But we're all just dealing with the reality of what is. Dustin says, HawksNest, I noticed you have a Madden 15 game on your wall, but where is the Madden 07 with Sean Alexander? Dustin, I'm putting you on a mission, my man. Okay, I did buy that game. I bought it digitally back in the day, so I don't have the hard copy of the game. Find me that box, Dustin, and I will put it right next to Richard. Okay, you find me that box. You find me that old Xbox container there. You don't even need to give me the game. Just find me that old container. Hell, get a printout done with it. Just give me it printed out. And I will put it on my wall, man. I promise you. The Rocket says, whenever we change our logo again, they should do a modernized version of our 1976 logo. I liked our 1976 logo. I did. That's tight. I'm sure you like this too, Rocket. Wouldn't you like to see our 80s uniforms on a game or two? Wouldn't that be cool? See that silver out there? I think it'd be pretty tight. D-Nugget says, unless Pete changes, this team is done. Maybe. There's an argument here, D-Nugget, if he buys back into his old philosophy and doubles back down on that and really, truly embraces it, maybe there's a potential there. you know. Rodney says, I doubt Watson goes to San Francisco. Of anything, Matt Ryan will end up there. To me, it's a perfect marriage for Matt Ryan in San Francisco. Rodney, that's been my long-held standing prediction on that as well. It makes just too much sense with Shanahan being the former offensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons during the Super Bowl year that Matt Ryan had his best season as a quarterback, essentially. And he looks at the situation and he goes, Watson's going to cost me 3 first-round picks. I can go get Matt Ryan for maybe a second-rounder. Is there going to be a vast difference in their play, especially with Matt Ryan already knowing my offense, already understanding how to execute it? I tend to agree with you. D-Nugget says, at this point, I'm just happy if the team stays in Seattle. Yeah, they're not going anywhere. We're not going to have this team moved out of Seattle. That's one of the nice things with having a fairly new stadium is they've signed, I think they've got like 30 more years on their lease that because the taxpayers have to pay, you can't move the team with that. Cameron Hughes, instead of Color Rush on Thursdays, the NFL should do Throwback Thursdays where teams wear their throwbacks on Thursday night. I love that idea, Cameron. That's a beautiful idea. Yes. The answer is a yes and 2 thumbs up on that one. That would be tight. Dark RH, Seahawks should have picked up Dwayne Haskins. Ooh, would have been real interesting, wouldn't it, Dark RH? I would have been very interested in something like that. I've actually been kind of a long guy. I know he's got a head case and he's got some problems and all that other stuff, and I get it. He's immature. But, man, I did like that guy coming out of Ohio State, and I knew he was going to take some time to kind of get his head on right. That was what the reports were. You knew you didn't want to vault him out there into the starting role instantaneously, but let him sit and develop and learn. Could have gotten him for real cheap if you wanted to do it that way, but evidently Seattle just wasn't in on that. Cameron Hughes says, Detroit wasted so many great players. I'd be sick if I got drafted there. I would too. It's just been an organization that just can't get itself right. Jamel Johnson, I wonder what shot called on 4th and 1 that Pete didn't like and sabotaged the play. He torpedoed the play and willfully took the punt. Yeah, I would imagine, Jamel, it was probably going to be a pass play, and Pete was saying we need a yard, go to the run, and Chadi's like, they're stacked up for the run on this. You can't do that. And Pete's like, I don't care. We're going to do it. Because part of Pete's whole thing, and this goes to his whole defense, is, yeah, you know what we're going to do, and we're going to do it. Stop us. And it's sort of that machismo, bravado thing where you stick out your chest and you're like, I'm such a badass. I can tell you what I'm going to do, and you can't do nothing to stop me. But it's really unrealistic as it concerns the modern NFL stage and the parity in the league and the competition and how everything is so close together as far as the teams go. Team Swag 29, we should bring in J.J. Watt. I agree, Team Swag. I'd love to see J.J. Watt brought in. I'd love to see that trade. I don't know if you'd have to trade for him, I think. Cameron, I wouldn't have minded picking up Haskins. Russ would have fixed up his character. Yeah, I think it would have helped being around Russ, for sure. And getting him out of an environment like, be Washington, just into the, Seattle's kind of just a low-key place. Place where he's got to kind of just toe the line a little bit. Seahawks fan base, I don't think J.J. Watt retired. No, he's going to play another year. Dark Rage, have you ever played Madden? It's a good game, but if you touch a quarterback, it's roughing the passer. I did. I tried every year to play Dark Rage because at the end of the day, I love me Madden back in the day when it was running right. It continues to get more broken with every new version that they whip out. They seem to be on this whole super team thing that they want to get everybody on. I always liked running the franchise mode and being like a pseudo general manager. So Dark Arch is actually putting together a Madden game of how I would fix this offseason, how I would go about this offseason and putting the team together, and I'm going to put that together and post it to the channel. So I'll at least utilize it for that. But, man, the game itself is just – it's really buggy, and it seems like it's predetermined in a lot of respects. Thanks for liking, and please do hit that like button if you happen to be new on in here into the chat or the show. Helps me out tremendously. Pay Dirt, Sports Cards. Who do you think Seattle will hire as the next offensive coordinator? Pay Dirt, I'm going to go with Dan Cannells, the quarterback coach, because I think he has a little bit of a relationship with Russell. They're fairly tight, which is going to placate to Russell a little bit, but he's also going to toe the line of what Coach Carroll likes, and it also falls in line with Coach Carroll recently where he's done hiring of nepotism. He goes and gets a strength and conditioning coach. It's the same one he had from USC. He goes back and looks for another defensive coordinator, brings in Ken Norton, a former coordinator. Even a guy like Schottenheimer is quite literally a nepotism hire. Guy's kid of a former head coach in the NFL. So I would probably lean to think that that's where that's going to go. Dark Rage is also, unless you are playing as Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, you have a higher chance of throwing an INT than completing a deep ball pass. True. Cameron Hughes says Darrell Taylor time. That's right. Yeah, they were hyping him up on the week of practice. He wasn't able to go in the game for the playoff game, but they said that he was looking good. Oh, that's what you're talking about the deep ball passes. Yeah, you do have a hard time throwing the deep ball pass in the game, Dark RH. It's weird, too. It's like when you're trying to lead him and get him out in front, it just doesn't always go. And then the defenders always catch up. Like the cornerbacks get the super speed. Your guy will have like 3 yards on him, and then they're just suddenly like right on top making the INT. Cameron, we could have drafted Alexander. The picks we got for the 18th pick were Rashad Penny, Alex Magoo, Jacob Martin, Rasheed Green. Give me Alexander over all those guys. J.R. Alexander. So Cameron Hughes is saying, yeah, probably would have been a better pick. Solstice Beat, how you doing, Solstice? Been a while since I've seen you in the chat. How you doing, girl? Hi, I just got off work. What the heck is going on? We got a disconnect between our coach and our quarterback right now. Solstice quarterback wants to go wild. He wants to cook. He wants to set the open flame of fire, get the meat on the grill. And our head coach, he wants to go for some cold sandwiches and chips. You know? And so we got a head coach right now who wants to go back and run the ball. And we got a quarterback that wants to cook. An offensive coordinator who's due to be hired, and that signing of that coordinator, Solstice, is going to tell us a lot about where that relationship is between Coach Carroll and Russell, and how happy Russell's going to be by the hire. Dark RH, Deshaun Watson throws under 2.5 seconds this season, 12 touchdowns and 0 INTs. Yep. And it's a key stat, Dark RH, because we're seeing so much of our quarterback not playing on time at times. Not doing. I bet if we look at those same stats of under 2.5 seconds and Russell in those under 2.5 seconds, probably not very good. Cameron, Russ got snubbed for MVP last year. The NFL should have given Lamar the flashiest player on the team, best team around him award. True, he had like 13 Pro Bowlers, didn't he, Cameron? And I think we had like 2 last year or something. We had a couple alternates. Russ certainly could have won it last year. He certainly could have. I think he had got a little bit cold as the year went on, which kind of upended it. Oreo Lak Ravan fan 2324. Love your content. Diehard Ravens fan, but still love your content, man. Keep up the hard work. Oreo, thank you very much. Brutal for you guys to have the situation play out like it did last week a little bit. Where, your quarterback with his running style and kind of playing like he is, kind of the play for no tomorrow kind of quarterback, a little bit like what Cam Newton was doing with the Panthers back in 16, 17, 18. And then it finally hits you here in this playoff game when he's been so good at staying healthy and staying upright through all the period. And then he gets sacked, I think, back in the end zone or what. I was like on the 2-yard line or something. And then that just upends your game there. It was going to still be hard for you guys to go in and beat Buffalo in there, but the way you did your offseason and the signings you did and how you constructed that team, I really thought you guys were really going to be in the mix on that this year. I thought this year was going to be a year you might push through and break through a little bit. But you still got a solid team in place, man. There's a lot of talent on that football team, and I don't know if there's anybody in the league that drafts as well as you guys do. You guys are outstanding drafters. You got guys, everybody's locked in. Even Jimmy Smith signed his 1-year, $5 million deal, so your corners are still going to be good next year. You guys are still in good shape. You guys will still be out there competing next year, and I thank you for watching the channel. I appreciate it. Cameron says, I really don't want the Bucs to play a Super Bowl in their own stadium. It won't feel right. No, it won't. That's true, but at least there won't be any fans. It's kind of the weird part of it. Finally, a team gets to play at its own stadium for a Super Bowl, and then there aren't any fans. Cameron says, I've been saying the offensive line was a scapegoat this year. My reasoning is that shoddy scheme sets up the O-line to fail with long developing plays that don't get open. Agree? 100% agree. I think it's a combination of not just that, Cameron, it's certainly midseason there where they just fell in love with the deep ball and everything had to be a deep shot. That goes to Schottenheimer, but then there's also some of this is Russell, Cameron, where Russell will run himself into sacks. I think he's sacked 45 times this year. I bet you could take probably 20 to 25 of those sacks and find those moments of it being specifically on Russell Wilson, holding the ball for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seconds, running all over the place and then getting sacked because he refuses to throw the ball away. God only knows why. I think a lot of that is on Russell. And this is backed up by the Pro Football Focus scores. This is backed up by those guys who watch every individual lineman, multiple guys, and they take the cumulative of those multiple guys watching that individual player on that line. They take the cumulative of that score, and that's what he got. And when you look at our offensive line this year, we were a top 12 offensive line in pass protecting efficiency. So in my opinion this year, when you look at that, when you look at the fact that we averaged like 4.8 yards per carry, hard for me to put this on the offensive line. I think the biggest thing, Cameron, is people remember the last game of the year. Last game of the year against the Rams, number 1 defense in the league. Our offensive line played their worst game of the season. So now all the games in the year, they played bad. That's the way people's mind sometimes works. They're all victim of the moment, all victim of the most recent thing they've seen. But that's not the way this offensive line pass protected this year. They gave Russell a lot of time. In fact, this was the best pass protecting line that Russell Wilson has had in his entire career. And if he's been able to flourish before with much lesser offensive lines, with absolute turnstiles at key positions like left tackle and left guard, why wasn't he able to flourish this year with so much better? Mark Hawk. The Hawks should give Peterson huge money to be the OC. 5 yards per carry with a trash O-line in Philly, plus an interesting attack with tight ends. He would be my number 1 guy if he was available over Anthony Lynn. And I would be moderately excited by a Doug Peterson hire because I think he's a legitimately great offensive coordinator in this league. And he understands how to run a modern offense for the reasons that you pointed to. Not just a one-trick pony. Well, I know how to do a running game. No, he can do a running game. He can implement the passing around it. He can run some of the read option concepts that are in play. He'll whip modern stuff into it. I like him a lot, but it does sound like he's pretty intent on sitting because he's going to be paid by the Eagles to sit on his couch this season, right? And if he goes and gets another job, he, I think, forfeits some of that salary or the offset of some of that salary, I think, getting another job. So you would have to pay him what they were paying him to bring him back. JSD, could we get Kamara to replace Carson? Unfortunately, not JSD. The Saints just signed Alvin Kamara to a new contract at the start of the season. So if they were to move him, that means 3 years of the bonus money would accelerate instantaneously. And if that happened, they're already $95 million over the cap. That means they would lose cap space to offload Kamara rather than saving cap money. He's not going anywhere. D-Boy, what is up, D-Boy? I was wondering if I was going to see you in here tonight. Good to see you, buddy. How you doing? D-Boy, we got Dustin deep in his troll game tonight. He is deep in the troll game. No one's taking his bait, though. I got to give our guys props. No one's taken the bait yet. Cameron Hughes, Damian Lewis got through that Arizona game at center, as Pete would say. He did, and he could be an interesting guy at that position, Cameron. There's certainly been times in the past guys have been moved from guard to center. It's a little late stage at this point in his career to be doing that. And again, this is a guy, Cameron, when I lean back, he's an all-pro rookie guard. Not all-pro, but he was made the all-rookie team as a guard. You know, if a guy does that, why move him off that position? Especially when there's a lot of great center candidates out there in free agency this year. I would be more adept at going in that direction. JSD, the Manning brothers. No, I don't put the Manning brothers JSD on the track of being bulletproof first round picks. Both of them had some issues with them. With Manning, it was arm strength. Does he have enough juice, enough cannon in that arm to get that ball out there? And the mobility aspect. And then with Eli, it was a matter of just look at his face. That was mean. That was mean. Cameron says, the day Percy got traded to the Jets was a sad day for me. He was one of my favorite players in the league when he was with the Vikings. I was so pumped when we got him. I was too. I was with my ex-girlfriend in bed, and she actually dropped the news to me. She was reading her thing. And we got Percy Harvin. I'm like, what are you talking about, woman? What are you speaking on, woman? And she said, we did. Like, stop. What are you doing to me? Stop. Don't play these kind of games. You know that I love my Seahawks. No, we got him. And she showed me the phone. So, yeah, I remember that. Remember that day we had. I was like, we're going to the Super Bowl. We are going to the Super Bowl. There was a lot of confidence spilling out that day. FU COVID. Man, this season was heartbreaking. Missed you live. Was heated on those losses. Well, FU COVID, I'm glad that you're able to make this one. Sorry you missed. I'm going to try to do more of these now, live streams. We're going to keep them a little shorter, bite-size. I know we're 3 hours in on this one, but I'm going to keep them more shorter, bite-size kind of spots so I can get more of them in, because I do get a lot of comments of people going, I can't make this time, but I could make that time. I'm hoping we catch everybody so I don't miss as many people that way. So we'll try to get these more going more consistently and just get more of them. D Nugget, I really love Pete, but he's breaking our hearts right now with his stubbornness. He is indeed. He is indeed. Dark Raids, perfect quarterback in the NFL. Trubisky accuracy, Mahomes haircut, Rodgers family, Brady scrambling skills, Big Ben consent, Breeze in playoff games, Russ MVP, Jameis Winston decision making. Oh, that's there's been that quarterback, Dark RH. I think there's been that quarterback, maybe minus the haircut. Maybe minus the haircut. I'm going Jeff George. I'm going Jeff George, Dark RH. Maybe on the consent and the haircut, it's a no, but everything else, including the playoff games, I think everything else, he would fit in that. You described Jeff George, a former, I think, number 1 overall pick as well. Seahawks, should they listen to Russ when hiring the new offensive coordinator? I would think it would be a pretty smart move to do if you want to continue to keep your quarterback happy, content, here for the next 12 to 13 years, if that is the plan that is in place. The question is that the plan? We have indicators from certain parts here and things that when Pete Carroll says we're going to go back to being a running team rather than bringing in an offensive coach who can take Russ to the next level. When you don't hear that and you hear this instead, that doesn't seem to indicate that they are looking to go in that direction. And when Russ has to Seahawks have a press conference and publicly say that he wants to have some say in the offensive coordinating role, as opposed to just calling Carroll directly and telling him that himself, probably not going to let him have that, but probably should. Bird of Prey, if Pete goes one and done or misses the playoffs entirely this upcoming season, then Pete undoubtedly must be fired. Well, you could make the argument that there's a thought process here that he could have needed to be undoubtedly fired this offseason. And I don't think one more one and done is going to have him do it because it hasn't done it the last 5 years. So if it hasn't done it the last 5 years, Birds of Prey, whether I agree with you or not, why does this particular year, if it happens again, be the one that causes it? Public outcry? The owner putting down his foot? I don't think these things are going to really happen. There's too much of the fan base that's very happy with being a consistent winner. It's a split fan base right now between the folks that really want to see them going for the Super Bowl versus those that say, man, why are you guys making so much rumpus here? Why are you guys getting so out of sorts? Just be happy with what we've done. Be happy with what we are. Be happy with where we've been for the past 5 years. And so with that being the case, and then add in addition to it that Carroll just signed his contract extension, I know many of you want him gone. He's not going anywhere. Not anytime soon. I know it. I can feel you guys want him gone, but it ain't happening. Cameron, if those 2013-2014 drafts were absolutely terrible, Luke Wilson and Paul Richardson, the best players in those classes, pathetic. You know, it's pathetic. Those were bad. Crap the bed on those drafts over and over and over again. They did. It was odd drafts. Am I the one that stopped watching football after the Seahawks got put out of the playoffs? No, D-boy. I'm right there with you, buddy. I always get butthurt right at the end of the year as soon as we lose. I'm bitter and I'm angry, and I watched a little bit of the games last week. I forced myself to watch just a little bit, but it was begrudging, and I turned away pretty quick. I'm just mad about it, especially after this year, D-boy. You know, especially after this year. Team 12s, how much do you like Javonte Williams? He's my favorite running back. Both him and the kid out of Alabama, Team 12s, are the closest thing you got in this draft to Marshawn Lynch. There's always some Marshawn Lynch types in the draft. Last year, there wasn't as many. There were more different skill-setted guys. But in this year's draft, those are the two Marshawn Lynch models. I think the Alabama guy is a little bit more talented, maybe a little bit more long-distance kind of speed, can break off a bit of the big runs a little bit more. But Javonte's really in that old Marshawn mold of he'll get you a lot of those 12 to 15 yard type runs, and he is hard to bring down. Like the first guy is not bringing him down. He's got strong legs, big, thick body. He's going to be a good player at the next level. I'd expect him to be a solid running back. Does everything really well for the most part. Runs behind his pads well. I didn't see a lot of weaknesses in his game other than just maybe a lack of speed where he's going to probably run, I would guess, like a 4.55 at the combine is what I see on tape. And that's okay. That's still good. He'll still be probably a high second-round pick. And if anything, Team 12s, it puts him in our wheelhouse, puts him in our reticule, because we're going to be in that, kind of back into that second round, and that should be right along the path of where he potentially falls, unless some team just falls in love with his physicality, because he's just a ferocious back in that respect. Demon Nugget, Chris Sims just broke down the Hawks issues and said basically everything you said. I like a lot of what he's got on it, D Nugget. He's a guy who's played the sport. He knows what it is to be an NFL quarterback. He knows what he's seeing. He watches a lot of tape. I think he's got a little bit of a soft spot for Seattle and liking some of the things they do, but there's things they do that really frustrates him. And I would tend to agree with a lot of what he says too. I think he's pretty solid. I wish more Hawk fans would be on board with Chris because I think he's got some really great perspective and views on the Hawks. It's just sometimes I think it hits people a little bit harshly where they don't like what he's saying. Doesn't not make it the truth though. Pay Dirt Sports Cards, Hawks Nest. Who would you like for the Seattle to hire as a new offensive coordinator? Dream scenario, Pay Dirt, is Lincoln Riley. Dream scenario is the guy out of Iowa, the head coach out of Iowa, is running a fantastic offensive attack down there. More on the lanes of those are probably two guys that aren't a possibility. So I lean back into probably it being, all things being equal with all the choices that are actively out there right now, because there's not a lot of great candidates out there right now. They're kind of already scooped up. A guy like Mark Roman from, or I don't know if it's Mark Roman, the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. Like, that's a guy I would love to bring in what he's done with them as far as having a mobile quarterback and taking advantage of that mobility, the stuff that he does in the running game with the pulling of the guards in order to get a numbers game out on the edges with his players. He does it really, really well. He'd be a great offensive coordinator, I think, for Seattle. And he goes back to the days of utilizing the best of Colin Kaepernick. He's a guy as a coordinator where I think it's the most out of it, but he's not available. And there's not a lot of those guys that are so good but are available. They've been scooped up, taken up. So I think Anthony Lynn becomes the likely one because he's the best of what is available. But he won't be the one that hired, I think, Canellis. Canellis is the quarterback coach of the Seahawks last year, is probably the guy that they hire. That's the likely one. Enrique M. Could Bieniemy be a target for us? It seems like he will not get a head coaching job, maybe because he doesn't really call plays in Kansas City. He could prove that in Seattle. No, I don't think he's going to move on from a great situation, which is the Kansas City Chiefs, where he's got so much to work with. He knows what he's doing there. It's only a matter of time before somebody eventually gives him a shot. And I don't think he's going to do a lateral move to come here, though you do make a good argument here in the respect of, but he would get at least the chance maybe to call plays where he doesn't get to necessarily do that over in Kansas City. I don't think that that's enough of a draw for him. I think the next time he moves on, it's going to be to move on to get a head coaching role in the NFL, which he probably deserves. Vexo FN, we need to get another target for Seattle. Yeah. Vexo, my name for you is T.Y. Hilton. I know he's a little older. I know some people out there might think that he's maybe lost a step and not what he was before, but he's also not had a lot of great quarterbacks who could take advantage of his skill set recently. Jacoby Brissett doesn't have the greatest deep ball, right? It's not the Andrew Luck days. And certainly Phillip Rivers was struggling to push the ball up the football field last year. Could be a guy with a little bit of juice still left in those legs, another season or two of some really stellar play. Very interested in potentially him coming aboard for Seattle. But either way, yes, we need to have 3 legitimate targets as I think we move into next season. You can't have a guy like Brett Swain or David Moore as your third guys out there time and time again. That's too weak. That's too weak for the position. You need to go stronger than that. So you can get more into the matchup game, the mismatch game. All right. Andrew Zavala. Oh, geez, I just missed your comment there, Andrew. 1 second. Geez, did I just fall behind or what? Andrew Zavala, man, I just miss Bam Bam Cam. I do. You guys want to know something funny? I got this this conference championship T-shirt, or not, this division championship T-shirt this year for our division win. And if you'll notice here, they got all the players here on the championship thing, right? But if you look really closely, you'll notice something kind of off in the middle. And that's that they randomly put Cam Chancellor in the middle of everybody. Like, they were like, not enough. We gotta add one random LOB member. So you have all these guys on here that are Seahawks players this year on this team, and then they just randomly threw in Bam Bam Cam because they liked him. Because why not? Cam Chancellor makes everything better. FU COVID didn't like DK's attitude during the Ram game, diva-ish. I can understand that FU. I always come back to on this with that take. I get where people are coming from with that. I would offer it's no unusual thing for a receiver to go off on the sideline because they're not getting targets. We've seen that a lot in the past, and even great receivers like Jerry Rice have done it. So it happens a lot, tends to be part of what you get with receivers, especially great receivers. Understandable why he might be frustrated when you're not targeting him and getting him the ball, especially if he's getting open at points. And then the last part of it to me, FU is just, he's a young player. Came in this league at 21 years old. Give him some time to mature. Not everybody's at their full maturity at 23 years old. I'm going to give him that time. And the last point is that, DK Metcalf's not, we got some problems on this team. We got issues on this team. We got some glaring warts that we need to get removed. DK Metcalf is not one of those players. Jamal Adams is not one of those players. They are not the problem. They're part of the answer. D-Boy, thank you for the $2 donation. I appreciate you, my guy. Thank you so much. He says, I'm late, but I'm here and I just wanted to show some love. I feel the love and I appreciate it. I know you hit me up on us doing the mod chat, and we are going to do that. Bear with me, D-Boy. I'm just working through some of that work stuff as far as timeline goes, but it's still at the forefront. I still want to do it as just a big thank you to you guys for everything you did. I know I got the mic back. I got it back fast. I'm watching you guys. I'm on it. And D-Boy doesn't have to explain. I'm the same way as D-Boy, you guys. When my NFL team loses, I'm bitter about it. I'm pissed about it. It takes me a couple weeks. It's hard to watch football when I'm that angry. I can watch a little bit of it, but man, especially when it's a team in a year you expected better and more from, that you thought you would be a contending team and then you weren't. It makes it extra specially brutal when it's got that layer to it. Matthias 23451, what are my 3 main off-season predictions? I am going to predict this off-season that, okay, I'll go bold with you. I'll go bold. I'll do a couple with this, Matthias. Number 1, we're going to let all of our free agents go. All of our free agents, Matthias, are not going to be signed by the Seattle Seahawks. That's my first bold take. Second bold take is that they're going to trade Tyler Lockett. Third bold take is that we're going to trade for J.J. Watt, just because I want that to happen. So how about that? Those are my 3 bold takes for you. D-Boy says, yeah, it was no disrespect, but you guys wasn't opposed to lose that game. We throw that game away, but you can't do nothing about it now, is what it is, Dark Rage. Yeah, sorry, you're talking Dark Rage, my bad. Insanity Mixes, Watson is not better than Russ. Maybe not. Maybe not. Russ has had a lot more to work with here than Watson gets to work with the Texans. That part's true. He's also younger than Russ, but maybe not. FU says, my opinion then, to try to force too much to DK. Seen some plays that either Tyler or Moore were wide open on little gains, but yet Russ tries to force it to DK. Could be FU, but there were also times in games this year, the first Cardinal game, the first Rams game, where I would see overhead all 22 shots during the broadcast that they'd show of replays where DK's running wide open and Russ isn't targeting him once throughout the whole game. There were a lot of games where Russ just didn't even target him at all. And if you look at DK and the amount of targets he had around the same guys who have the same amount of catches around him, statistically speaking, all of them got a lot more targets to get those catches. Most of them did. I can understand as a guy, as a receiver, who you're getting open, you're not getting targeted. That's going to frustrate me too. Am I going to be a diva and throw a fit on the sideline? No. But certainly it's going to be a point of frustration. D-Nugget says, always the best Hawks channel on YouTube because truth spoke here. I appreciate you, D-Nugget. Thank you so much, man. Mark Hawk, Shoddy had 8 weeks to fix the response to the too high safety look. He couldn't do it. Shoddy couldn't beat the Giants at home. He will be lucky to get a Power 5 offensive coordinator job. Yeah, Mark, I mean, you could make the argument, frankly, that was Schottenheimer going to for sure get another offensive coordinator job before Seattle hired him? I think he had gone a year or two without being, I think maybe a quarterback's coach. Is almost like he had gone down a notch rather than elevating to head coaching role from the offensive coordinating with the Jets. He's down to being a quarterback's coach with the Colts. That's not a lateral move. That's going down. So you can make the argument, Mark, that nobody was going to be as high on Schottenheimer as Coach Carroll was going to be. No one was going to give him that same shot once again. And certainly right now, we're not seeing anybody else having him targeted as a possibility. He's a guy who was being talked about as a head coaching possibility with the Texans, and now he's not even being mentioned as an offensive coordinator anywhere. Meanwhile, Bevel gets hired with the Jaguars. Very interesting. Very interesting. The Rocket, one person I used to work with, thought that Russell Wilson would be the Balto of the Seahawks in saving the team. I don't know who Balto is, Rocket. You'll have to tell me on that one. Mafwi says, Sack Pete. A lot of Sack Pete's in here, Mafwi. You're not alone on that one. Or Oreo Raven fan. Love your content. Diehard Ravens fans still love your content still. Keep up the hard work. Thank you, my guy. D-Boy, don't guess. We both know Russ and the couching won that game for you. Insanity Mixes, last 5 years, we have only been good because of Russ. I don't think that's true, Insanity Mixes. There's certainly been years where Russ has had to put Seattle on his back, but if you look at the last season, for instance, he had as much of a supporting cast offensively as he's had throughout his whole entire career. He's been much more productive with a lot less in 2016 and 2017 and 2018 than he was this year. Having a guy like DK Metcalf, who might be the next generational receiving talent out there, having a Tyler Lockett, one of the best slot receivers in the game, and Carson, an offensive line with a franchise left tackle and an all rookie guard, and just he had a lot. He had a lot to work with. It's as much as ever. But I don't know that I would go to say the last 5 years we've only been good because of Russ. I think on a couple of those years that's true. I don't know if it's true on all of those years. Dustin says, Hawks Nest, consistency means we stay in Seattle. Do we want to risk 5 to 7 seasons of mediocre and then there have to be talks about us moving? I get where you're coming from on that, Dustin, but I also understand how the lease agreement works with the stadium that we had built, which was paid by taxpayer money. And one of the things with that is like when we built that, it was kind of a thing that we wanted to have a big, long lease because we were aware of the fact that Ken Behring had tried to move ourselves out of town. And if we're going to drop $400, $500 million on a stadium, you better be sure that you're going to be keeping this team here for years to come. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that the lease goes all the way through 2040 minimum, if not further beyond that. I would be very surprised to see Jody Allen sell us to a team that was to an ownership group that would want to eventually move us out of town, but they would still have to wait those 20 years to do so. They would be held to that lease. Consumer 114, if Russ went out next year, do you think DK will as well? If Russ was not necessarily, Consumer. We don't know that, there isn't some frustration with DK and playing with Russell Wilson, that maybe he thinks he could have done a little bit more with a different quarterback potentially. I would wonder that with some of the diva moments that you're seeing. But no, I don't think that necessarily means that. And Seattle's going to have a leverage game over the top of DK, where DK is going to want a new contract after next season. He'll be 3 years in the league, due for a new contract. Seattle could theoretically franchise him through 2 of the prime years of his career at that point if they want to go that route. So that means there'll probably be a deal that gets done one way or another there. D-Nugget, okay, I feel better now. Didn't know our stadium contract keeps the team in town. Phew. Okay, good. You're good, D-Nugget. That's why you come here, man. I can give you some silver lining. Standard Champion, sorry if you already touched upon this, but do you think the OC hiring will determine if Wilson requests a trade? Standard Champion, 100%. 100%. I can't remember of any team in the NFL recently where so much is going to be determined off of what we understand the offensive coordinator to be. Who hires him? Who wanted him? What kind of coordinator is he going to be? Run-centric, etc. I think it's going to tell us a lot about Russell Wilson's future the day we learn about that signing. And it certainly could be an indicator that he's probably going to be traded. If Carroll goes to some run-centric guy who's a run coordinator with not a very wide history of being a high-powered passing attack or running some different concepts and being intricate with it a little bit, certainly that would be a precursor, I would think, to Russell going to the front office and saying, okay, guys, I see what's going on here. Let's move on. Ricardo Reyes, was Russell the main problem this season? Not through the whole season, Ricardo, but through the back half of the season, through the back half of the 8 games, he was offensively the problem. Certainly, there's a little bit of blame to go here to Pete Carroll to getting so conservative. Certainly, there's a little bit of blame to go to Schottenheimer in his uninspired offensive attack. But as I've maintained, Ricardo, when you want to insist upon being the highest paid quarterback in the sport, when you talk about wanting to be the best that plays this game at the quarterback position, you need to be able to elevate the talent around you. Not everything is going to be working perfectly for you to succeed. And you need to sometimes flourish within that. Other quarterbacks have. And I don't think that he did. So yeah, he was. I don't know if he was the main problem. Very close to being the main problem. Probably if I thought about it more, I might push him to being more of the main problem because he just fell off a cliff. He went from being an MVP candidate, the front-running MVP candidate, to the back half of the schedule playing below league average at the quarterback position. It was a stark change from the first games. And frankly, the word I've used over and over again, Ricardo, inexplicable. I've never seen anything like it. where there's not some injury or some extra thing where he's lost half of his team to injury or something like that. Nope, relatively healthy, great frontline talent. Quarterback still seems to be healthy, falls off a cliff. Very strange to see. Very strange to see. Jamel Johnson, I will admit I watched the Packers game where they ran the ball down the Rams' throat and it opened everything up. Also, how Cleveland run game had everything opened up. I thought myself, is this what Pete's watching? I think is what you were saying there, Jamal. It's true. It's true. And he'll reference it. D Nugget, thank you for the $2 donation, my guy. I do appreciate you and I salute you and D boy. Thank you so much for that. Fiji Mark, what the hell happened to Justin Britt? He was playing at a Pro Bowl level. Does the one injury that many overcome and end your career? Well, it can, Fiji Mark. I think that there's certainly a little bit of a difference of opinion of how he played as it's viewed league-wide and the lack of opportunities that he was offered throughout this season. When you look at Britt, he came into this league as a right tackle, kind of fizzled out as a right tackle. They tried him at right guard. Kind of fizzled out as a right guard. They put him at center, and wow, they had some good returns instantly. And those good returns brought about a new contract. The moment he signed that contract moving forward, his play dipped. And he played below league average as a center right from that point forward. So while I like that 1 year he had that you referenced, Fiji, he wasn't able to consistently keep it at that mark. And when you look at the rest of the years of his career, playing right guard, playing right tackle, and playing below league average there, he's a below league average lineman. And those aren't just going to be sought after very much throughout the league. Byron Schmidt. 2013 Seahawks or 85 Bears? 2013 Seahawks, Byron. And I'll say it for the same reason somebody asked earlier, Baltimore Ravens of 2000 or the Seahawks in 2013. The separator to me comes down to this and this really only at the end of the day. Who'd you have to take out to get your title? Who was the big dog that you were having to go up against on that block? Because the Chicago Bears got to play the Detroit Patriots. Can any of you at all name one of those Patriot players in that 85 team? Maybe one. And then we look at the Ravens. Who did they get to play? The New York Giants with Kerry Collins at quarterback. Now we look at who the Seattle got to play. They got to play the most high-powered offense in NFL history. 55 touchdowns passing. Passing yardage record set. They had to take out the best of the best while also being the best of the best. That separates them from me. But I'm a homer. What are you going to do? Blazers in 6. We're a creative offensive coordinator away from a Super Bowl appearance. Watching how Green Bay adjusts to their opponent and uses motion scheming to dictate the game their way is how they win. We can do it too. A new offensive coordinator. Go Hawks. This is the direction I think a majority of us want to go in Blazers in 6. This is all what we really do, I think, want to see at the end of the day. The problem being is that the indicators from Coach Carroll seem to be he's not going to go in that direction. And he certainly didn't go in that direction before. Because let's face it, we were here 3 years ago too. We were here with Bevel going, Bevel is so inspiring. He's so boring. He's so milquetoast as a coordinator. We need to get more varied. We need a modern NFL offense here, man. Modern NFL offense. And Coach Carroll went, that's great. Schottenheimer. He didn't go for it there. He didn't go for it then. It makes me hard-pressed to believe he's going to go for it now. But I do agree with you in that it's what is needed, Blazers in 6, and it could have the kind of effect that you're talking about, where now you're a Super Bowl contending team almost off this one basis alone, because it's such a hindrance right now in the way it's played out and been playing out. Coltrane Duquette, NFL is rigged and script, agreed. I think there's times where officials can maybe move things in a certain way and try to have some effect, but I don't think I'm going to go all in on the conspiracy that like every game is fixed or something. I think that would be way too hard to pull off. 2005 Super Bowl was fixed. That was absolutely fixed. FU says Russell always chokes the MVP. He's had 3 straight years where he's been the front runner and choked out down the final stretch. That's true. Coltrane, NFL classified themselves as a sports entertainment industry just like the WWE. If it was all legit, they would classify themselves as competitive sports like MLS, but they don't because it's all scripted. Hard to see how being all scripted necessarily, I think, on that. I don't know if I can sign off on that one. I get where you're coming from, Coltrane, I do. Let's see here. Ian Fowler. If anything, I would say the NFL is the least likely to be rigged. I'd say it's a lot harder to do it, I'd say. That's for sure. I think baseball's a tough one to rig. I think basketball's the easiest. But I'd agree, football's hard because of the physicality of the sport and the random nature of stuff happening. Guy can just slip and fall when there's too many things that could go on to make it hard to do it. I think the officiating can come in and do certain things to have certain effects with it, but not full on script. Ian Ballard, silence dwarf and wander back to your hole. WD World WWE came out and it was rigged. If NFL was doing it, they could have to come out and say it's mathematically impossible for no player to come out and say it was staged or for clout. Go to bed, Dustin. Grim TT, just the Manning face itself should have its own bust in Canton. It should. Right next to Cutler. Just have the two faces facing each other, just vague indifference. Dark Rage says, I think 90% of the trolls on this stream is just Dustin on his alt accounts. Well, he's keeping the view count high, you know? You got to appreciate him for that. Ian says, why wouldn't they take the $1 million salary they signed a contract for? At least then they are legally guaranteed the funds rather than depending on NFL bribes. Orion Luck, Raven fan, who do you want the Hawks to draft? Hard to say, Oreo, because we're picking at the back end of the second round. We lost our first round picks in the Jamal Adams trade. I guess I would more likely lock into a position. And I liked a lot of what they did last year, Damian Lewis, targeting him relatively high in the third round, a guy they thought would be solid. And I thought the day of the draft, I said, I think this guy's our most bulletproof draft pick. And then I think that you've got a league starter for 10 years and you might have some upper level Pro Bowl potential play in this guy. Sure wouldn't mind it if they had a left guard that they could target that they really liked in this draft and grabbed him. Same thing true with the left tackle. If I'm going for an actual player name, I'm going to go with that North Carolina running back. We're going to need a running back. We're going to let Carson go in free agency. You're going to let Hyde go in free agency. I'd like to pair Rashad Penny up with a guy with a different skill set than he has. That Williams kid out of North Carolina, fantastic skill set. Marshawn Lynch mold, everything Pete Carroll looks for in a running back. I think he'd be a fantastic addition and probably likely to be there around the midpoint of the second round. Cameron Hughes, Chris Borland retired of head injuries. That's another one, Cameron. Russ took out Chris Borland too. That's right. It was his last concussion that Russ caused on him. He said, I don't want to tackle Russell Wilson anymore. We're having some interesting talks in the chat regarding the rigging of games and the potential of that. I think guys are pretty on point with it when I'm reading. I believe they put metal in the ball and used magnets to alter the ball in midair. Had an interview about it in 1980. Oh, jeez. Flag Sabbath, how you doing, Flag? Good to see you in the chat. It's not maggots anymore. The footballs are drones. Discussion is lively regarding the fixed stock here. Very lively. Spud Horner, how you doing, Spud? It says, do you think we keep Dunlap? And what free agent defensive end do you think will sign? Your hunch. Yes, I think, Spud, we're going to keep Dunlap. The key being is that you had him rejigger his contract at the time of the signing. Part of that rejiggering, I think, was to get the second-year cap hit at a place that was going to be acceptable for Seattle to still keep him along. And as good as he was probably, if not the most effective pass rusher, one of the most effective pass rushers in the NFL through the back half of the season, this is all going to lend itself to you bringing him back at that point. What free agent defensive end do I think they'll sign? Let me look at my list here of my guys and get a guy where I think they'll go. Well, I don't think they're going to give a guy like Yannick Ngakoue big money. I'm actually going to go for a little bit of a retread here on this one, Spud, and I'm going to go with Jadeveon Clowney. And the reason being is I think you'll be able to get him on this year you got familiarity with him. You tried to bring him back last minute last year. He's going to cost even less money than he costed this year to bring him along. Probably get him on a 2-year deal pretty cheap. I think that will fit within Seattle's wheelhouse and for the room that they have available. Because we don't just have the available to sign any defensive end spud. You can't go get Yannick Ngakoue, who's going to sign a 4-year, $50 million deal out there, if not a little bit more. You're not going to have that money to spend on a guy like that. So it's got to be one of these guys like that or a J.J. Watt type who you can maybe get a little bit of on a discounted deal in that realm. Connor Dunn says first place schedule for us next season. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit tougher, but Connor can turn too. Don't forget, teams flip on their edge. I mentioned like one of the teams that we play being the Saints. That team's going to get gutted this offseason. So while it looks tough right now, when you watch half of their prime guys get cut down so they can get underneath the salary cap, maybe that game doesn't look as tough. Likewise, even at Colts, what are they doing at the quarterback position? Good defense, but they don't have a quarterback going in next year. Maybe that's a little bit of an easier game for us to deal with. So it looks a little bit tough right now, but let's give it a little bit of time. Let the offseason marinate a little bit, and then we'll see where it's really at. Lou Dog 777 says, what are the salary cap implications of trading Russ? You would be carrying a negative $7 million cap hit, Lou Dog. But the important part about this is it's not just that, okay, you have a negative $7 million cap hit to move him. It's the aspect that now I do get to plan for the next year 2 and 3 and 4 after this year of not having that what's going to be $38 million contract on the books. That clears off. So now I can push some of my contracts into 2-3 years out now with that extra space I've created to gain more flexibility in the now. But negative $7 million would be the hit. Spider Horner says, would you move Damian Lewis to left guard or keep him at right guard? No, you're going to actually keep Damian Lewis at right guard. The key guards are very much similar to tackles. You can think of them in the same lane of tackle. Left tackle is your blindside protector. You need that as a dancing bear, a guy that's going to protect his quarterback. Likewise, the left guard's got to be a somewhat similar player in the respect of he's got to be able to pass protect. It's got to be that's his foray because he's going to be going up against the 3-tech defensive tackle more often than not. The right guard, on the other hand, is going to be more often than not taking on the 1-tech, the guy lined up between usually the center and the right guard. A lot of times he's going to have help. Most of the time that right guard's going to be a road grader. A lot of times that right guard might struggle just a little bit in pass protection. You don't need him to be as clean in that respect because he gets to have double team help more often than not. When you look at Damian Lewis, he had phenomenal grades with Pro Football Focus in his run blocking this year. Absolutely phenomenal. One of the best in the league. Top 2, top 3 in the league. But as a pass blocker, he really struggled. So you're not going to flip him over into left guard and put him out on that island to block like that where you're not going to take advantage of his best skill set, which is just being that road grader who's going to create holes for you in the run game. Spider Horner, what do we do at tight end? I'm not really sure. You don't have a lot of draft capital. Hard to see them reaching out in tight end. They had a first-round grade on Colby Parkinson last year, reportedly. Maybe they feel like he's really going to drive home for them on the development side of it, and they like Disley coming another year off of major lower leg surgery after 2 major lower leg injuries in back-to-back years. Maybe an extra year gets him a little bit more bounce back to his step. I think both of those 2 guys are in their plans. We may see Steven Sullivan slide back over into that tight end role too, if they like what they see out of him from that standpoint. I guess as a dark horse candidate, the guy I would look at and point to is Jonnu Smith from the Tennessee Titans. Really complete tight end for them, can run block, can catch, can do it all. Probably not going to get paid through the roof, but a really valuable player who they might want to kick the tires on. So just to give you a name, that'd be a guy I think that they might take a look at. All right, sorry, I lost my spot here. Spider Horner, where do you think Blair will play next year? I think Blair is going to probably be our free safety next year, or at least they'll probably have him as kind of the jack of all trades. He'll be the main backup at free safety, main backup at strong safety, and the main backup at slot. I'm probably going to bring him along slowly coming off the ACL, so you may not have a starter role for him. There's a place you could go here, Sport Horner, where you could look to move Quandre Diggs for some draft capital, recoup some of the draft that we've lost. We only have 3 picks right now, so you know that Schneider wants to recoup some of that draft capital that he lost with some of the trades that he had to make. So that would be a guy you could potentially do it where you could clear like $5-6 million by moving on from Quandre Diggs, going a little bit cheaper there with Blair. But I would tend to think that they're probably just going to keep him in there at depth, him coming off that ACL injury. Connor Dunn's Dark Rage, what the heck are you going on? You're yelling at me. What is going on? Connor, we got some back and forth going. Don't think anything of it. Gino, am I the only one who gets mad when I see other teams move the ball so easily and think how terrible Seattle's offense has been and they can never convert on third down, laughing out loud? No, I think you're onto something there a little bit with the Gino. I mean, the offense makes playing offense look hard. They make everything look hard. They make getting yards look hard. There's nothing easy about the offense. There's nothing that just is simple. Everything is made to sort of be going uphill all the time and how it feels, right? And I think that's some of what you're talking about there, where you see other teams just have these easy things. Take that throw that Aaron Rodgers makes to Devontae Adams in this last game, where they run that little pick route. And it's a simple pick play where Jalen Ramsey's asked for a switch, and this pissed Jalen Ramsey off on the sideline, and he was having a big moment afterwards. Just a simple, quick play, but the ball's out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. He makes the right read on the play, gets the ball into his receiver's hands, doesn't sit there and think about it a lot. You don't see those type of plays with Seattle much. Most of the stuff is slow developing, taking forever, Russ looking all over the place, finally deciding to go somewhere. Yeah, it would be nice if they could make things a little bit more easier in that respect. Lou Dog 777, any news on the Adams contract? There is no news on the contract, but I do expect him to sign a contract extension this offseason. The agreement was if he was going to come to Seattle and get to come to a contender as opposed to the Jets dumping him to just whoever, was that he would play last year on his $3.6 million salary. Well, he's not going to be asked to have to play on the 1-year, $10 million salary next year. No. I think the agreement was if you ball out, you play out, we'll sign you to an extension. I'd expect Seattle to do that. The safety market's been a little depressed. Outside of Budda Baker's new deal, we're not yet seeing the new deal for Minkah Fitzpatrick, or Derwin James is not going to get his new deal. So it's not been vaulted up into that 18, 19, $20 million territory. Probably just a hair over $16 million a season is where I'm going to line on the Jamal Adams contract extension. Spud Horner coming in with a $2 dono. Thank you so much, Spud. I appreciate you, man. It's always great to see you in the chat. And I do salute you, kind sir. Flag Zabbath, they want to run more and get creative. Bring in Kyle Kuzcek, just so I can butcher his name while celebrating all the great plays he has. I brought him up earlier. I mean, I'd like to see them target. If you're going to be old school and you want to run the ball, get yourself a fullback. They're valuable. You can get back more into the I formation stuff. You can get back under center more, running some more of that play action from the traditional way you would run it. We saw so much of our play action have to be off the shotgun read option looks all the time. Kind of got stale. JD, I really don't want to believe it's rigged, but I just looked up the magnet catch and it's as sus as F. Flag Sabbath asks, do we keep Posick? We need to bring in Scherf or Thuney. So let's go through that a little bit, Flag. Again, you're not going to bring in Scherf because for the reasons I just mentioned a second ago about not moving Damian Lewis to left guard. Scherf is a right guard, so you're not going to move him over to left guard. He's got the same kind of pass protection issues I talked about are going to still exist. So just because a guy's a good right guard doesn't make him a good left guard and vice versa. If you got a good pass protecting left guard that doesn't drive people off the ball as well, probably don't want to bounce him over into the right guard. Do we keep Posick? Yeah, we keep Posick. They'll put probably a 3rd, 4th round tender on him, and I don't think somebody's going to sign him at that role, Flag. So you probably bring him back at that point, though I would expect them to push him on the depth front. They'd look to add better frontline talent there. He held his water okay. He's had some games he struggled, had some games he played better. I was expecting more myself. So, yeah. Cameron Hughes, all right, Brandon, I'm going to bed. It's midnight here in Washington and school night. I'll catch you next stream. I'll leave a comment so you can mod my account. I will do that for sure, my guy. For sure. FB. Spud Horner, get a FB? Laughing out loud. What do you mean on that one, Spud? Dustin HawksNest, how do we solve our running back field with Carson gone, and why does it involve Sean? Well, Sean's been doing the P80, P90X, Dustin. He's been getting the rip body that he never had here in the prime of his career. So now he's like Super Sean, overcoming his age by working out so hard. And he's just coming through the facility over the offseason at one point. Pete's going to see his body. With Pete going shirtless after he saw DK, he likes himself some stacked upper body. All that combination comes together. Here comes Sean. Week 1, he's your starter. Fullback. Oh, FB, get a fullback. Sorry about that, Spud. Yeah, I want to see us to get a fullback too, man. Why not go out and find the best fullback in this draft and target him? You can probably get him in the 4th or 5th round because half the teams don't even have a fullback anymore. And again, if you utilize him right, just be creative with it. Look at how Niners have used Kyle Kuchek and bringing him over, and they targeted that guy from the Ravens. They knew the kind of player they were bringing him in on that. Not like he costed him a lot of money to do so, but he's been a pretty valuable piece for them. Pretty valuable. All right. We're 3.5 hours in. I want to do these as kind of shorter deals. I think we've blown through most of the folks. I've caught up on the questions. Darker H asked, why did the fullback position die? The fullback position died because of the read option, in my opinion, Dark RH. I think it was the final killer of the fullback because what you had at that point is quarterbacks going into shotgun. And, in the 80s, you used to have potentially two guys on either side of you in shotgun. Now it's gone to that guy being one guy at tight end, one guy at running back. So if you're going to go to a single running back set at that point, you're going to have a true tailback back there rather than a fullback, a guy that can be a threat out of the backfield, unless you got one of those, super duper califragilistic fullbacks that can just do it all. You're not going to have a guy as adept at running those routes. They're just not really built that way anymore. So I think it was the read option that killed it personally. Spud Owner says, I love the fullback position. Miss Robinson and would love to see that position again. I did too, Spud. We've actually got a pretty good lineage of fullbacks here with Seattle too. John L. Williams is one of my favorite players for the Seahawks. What a fantastic fullback he was for years for us. I mean, a do-it-all guy. He could run the ball. He could catch out of the backfield. Fantastic in Knox's offense. And then, of course, who can forget Leonard Weaver and his baptism? Remember the baptism of Leonard Weaver, his stiff arm? That's what they called his stiff arm, was the baptism, because he was, I think, a reverend in his off time. But he was another one of those could do it all kind of fullbacks that when he was on the field, man, he was helpful. He seemed to provide an element to the offense that you didn't have otherwise. And then, of course, you mentioned Mike Robinson, who also was really good for us throughout his time here. Pretty solid fullback as a lead back from Marshawn. All right. Well, we've hit our 3 hours and 30 minutes. I have caught up on all the questions. D-Boy, thank you for jumping in. I appreciate your donation. D-Nugget, Spud Horner, thank you so much. I always forget all the names on this. Chris and whatnot. Let's see if we got any last things. Flag Sabbath, Puna for fullback. I love it, Flag Sabbath. He'd be perfect for it, wouldn't it? Perfect build, perfect size for it. Dark RH says, okay, gotcha. Good stream. I got really frustrated with the trolls at the end. See you in the next stream. Dark RH, it's what Dustin does. You'll get used to it with it. You just ignore him and he just eventually tapers out and fizzles out. But it's all good, man. It was a great little stream here today. I'm going to try to do more of these. I will get the schedule up for you guys here hopefully shortly where it's going to be consistent. We'll get a day maybe on the weekend, one day on the week would be maybe kind of an ideal. But you guys can't push me to that 5-hour mark every time then. We got to go shorter. Either way. Jeff, thank you for the donation too, man. I totally forgot. He says, great to have the stream tonight, Brandon. Have a good evening. Cheers from Montana, Jeff. Stay warm over there. Don't get cold. Don't get up in that snow. Get yourself in front of that warm fire with a hot cocoa, hot cup of coffee. I appreciate you as ever for jumping in, Jeff, and thank you for that donation. You're always good with that, man. Gino says, wait, sorry if I missed it. When are you doing your Madden video? Gino, I'm kind of just putting it together right now. So hopefully I will have that out relatively soon. But at some point this offseason, you will have that Madden video. I promise you. I will show you the way Brandon, would fix the Seattle Seahawks team and turn our fortunes around in this one offseason. And it begins with me building that offensive lineup. You're going to see me build a super offensive lineup. And then I'm going to simulate the season out 10 different times. Because simulating it once doesn't tell you what the aggregate would be. So I'm going to simulate 10 different times the season out with the roster I built and see what I come to as sort of a common record, a common conclusion of the season, and see if it looks like a winning path for our Seahawks. It's kind of a fun little video to do. Dustin Elrod said, see Sean Alexander for Hall of Fame. Well, yeah, maybe get there eventually, Dustin. You never know. I do appreciate you, man. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for keeping this as lively as ever. Please do, if you're watching this in record, hit that like button if you'd be watching it in long after this has been posted. Thank you so much, and don't none of you ever forget. I see some of you out there and you're forgetting. You are. I can feel you wavering. You're wavering. Stop that wavering. Don't you forget.